Welcome to the 99th Annual General Meeting of the Radio Society of Great Britain. I'm Steve Thomas, M1ACB, the RSGB General Manager. We start, as always, with a few administrative points. The format of this online annual general meeting was agreed by the Board of the Radio Society of Great Britain in February 2026. The calling notice, previous minutes and election details were published in the April 2026 edition of RADCOM and on the Society's website at rsgb.org/AGM, together with the annual reports and financial statements. Paid up members of the Society have been able to vote online or by post. The voting has been conducted by Civica Election Services on behalf of the Society, and the ballot closed at 9 AM on the 16th of April 2026. Members have been able to submit written questions to the Board of Directors in advance of this meeting and to register to ask a question live via Zoom. Registration for video questions closed at 9 AM on the 13th of April, and submissions for written questions closed at 9 AM on the 16th of April 2026. The board will also be taking questions submitted via the YouTube live chat later in the meeting. Due to time constraints, priority will be given to questions submitted in advance and then to questions asked by members via the live chat. If large volumes of questions are received, we will only share 2 questions per person or organisation during the AGM to ensure that as many people as possible are included. These proceedings are being recorded and will be available via the Society's website in due course. As you know from our Articles of Association, any resolutions to be considered by the meeting must be submitted 21 days in advance. We've received no resolutions and the meeting will be as set out in the calling notice. During the formal AGM, previously submitted questions will be addressed if they relate to agenda items, or separately during the subsequent session if they relate to more general work of the Society or amateur radio matters. We are presenting this live, but if technology fails and the live stream stops, the AGM will continue and the results will be announced via other communications channels. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Society's Board Chair, Dr. Stuart Bryant, G3YSX.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Society's Annual General Meeting. Before we start proceedings, I would like us all to take a few minutes to remember those members who have sadly passed away in the last year. In particular, we remember 3 RSGB past presidents who died recently: Dr. Bob Whelan, G3PJT, Dr. Julian Ganaway, G3YGF, Colin Thomas, G3PSM, and Lifetime Achievement winner Chris Whitmarsh, G0FDZ. Thank you. Before we continue the proceedings, I'd like to note that today, the 18th of April, is World Amateur Radio Day. It was on this day in 1925 that the International Amateur Radio Union, the IARU, was formed in Paris. Finally, before we start the formal business, let me confirm that this is the annual general meeting dealing with the business as described in the calling notice. After the formal part of the meeting, we will hear a message from our President, Bob Beebe, GU4YOX, and this will be followed by the presentation of awards. We will then move to a Q&A session for board members to answer previously submitted and a selection of live questions as time allows. The AGM will conclude with an interactive panel session entitled Spectrum Matters. It's vital and needs your support. We now turn to the formal meeting, the 99th Annual General Meeting. The President, Bob Beebe, GU4YOX. The Honourable Treasurer, Chris Wood, GD6TWF. The Company Secretary, Stephen Purser, GW4SHF. And the General Manager, Steve Thomas, M1ACB, will also be contributing to this meeting. Also joining the meeting are members of the board and some senior members of staff. We have received apologies for absence from the following members: Mark Jones, G0MGX, and Nathan Nuttall, 2M0OCC. I now move to the published agenda. Agenda item 1, which is resolution 1, is to receive and, if approved, confirm the minutes of the 98th annual general meeting held on the 12th of April 2025 and circulated to members in the April 2026 RADCOM. It is not a requirement that these minutes be presented at the general meeting, nor is it required that we record any details of discussion on them other than to record decisions made. We haven't received any questions regarding this subject. There is a board motion to confirm the minutes. May I have a proposer, please?
Bob Beebe, GU4YOX.
Thank you, Bob. May I now have a seconder, please?
Len Paget, GM0ONX.
Thank you, Len. The results of the voting independently managed by Civica Election Services show that the motion is carried by 438 votes to 1 with no abstentions. Item 2 is to receive and consider the accounts for the period of the 1st of January 2025 to 31st of December 2025, and the reports of the board and the auditor, which were made available online from the 18th of March 2026. I call upon the Treasurer, Chris Wood, GD6TWF, to present the auditor's report.
Thank you, Stuart. You'll have noted that we have had a positive audit, which is what you would expect. We should highlight the auditors were particularly impressed with the professionalism with which we manage our finances, processes and procedures.
Thank you, Chris. Now to the accounts. I will start by mentioning that there is no requirement to lodge the accounts, and the purpose of this item on the agenda is to give members the opportunity to submit any questions in advance of the AGM to be answered at this time. I will ask Chris to give a brief summary of the accounting period 2025.
Thank you, Stuart. I've recorded my summary this year so that we could illustrate the figures that I'm reporting to members. The accounts of the Society for the year ended 31st of December 2025 were published recently. I'm pleased to report the auditors identified no issues during their audit. Robust internal controls were observed. I thank all of the staff and volunteers involved in the audit for this. Society has made a deficit of £35,963 for the year ended 31st December 2025. It's pleasing to report the deficit is less than budgeted. Turnover for the year was £1,758,000. The majority of income is derived from membership fees. Whilst membership numbers have fallen by 3.3% during the year, income has remained stable as the effect of previous membership fee increases takes effect. The board has already agreed there will be no membership fee increase in 2026 as it seeks to support and retain members in the current challenging economic times. The demand for examinations weakened slightly in 2025 and the income fell to £107,000. A fall of 3.5%. This income has to fund the costs of providing the examination service, including a member of staff to administer the exams and the broader costs associated with providing the examinations. Advertising revenue was £116,000, which is 9.8% lower than 2024. Demand for advertising remains weak as we compete against other forms of advertising. We hope the RSGB digital platform launched during 2025 will provide new advertising revenue opportunities. 2025 total costs were higher than 2024 at £1,845,000, an increase of 2.6%. This compares favourably with the retail price index increase during 2025 of 4.3% and demonstrates commitment by the staff and board to maintain a close control of costs in a challenging environment. Balance sheet of the Society remains strong. Society has liquid assets of £989,000 available to support its operations. This has increased since 2024 despite the 2025 deficit of £35,963. Society holds a portfolio of investments. These rose in value by £33,000 to £627,000. The value of these investments has now recovered all of the losses incurred as a result of the geopolitical events in 2022 and now exceeds the 31st of December 2021 valuation. These are invested in a diversified portfolio of conservative investment funds. The Legacy Fund was established in 2011 to isolate bequests from operating funds. The fund is overseen by a legacy committee that makes recommendations to the board on how the fund should be utilised. Its aim is to provide funding to amateur radio projects that would not ordinarily be funded by the RSGB. During 2025, the Legacy Fund distributed more than £8,500 to 9 projects. Here are a few examples. £2,500 to the RSGB outreach team to launch a weather balloon with LoRa DigiBeat payload. Alongside the launch was an RSGB tracking challenge. This was part of the Society's National Coding Week activities for 2025. The launch was live streamed on YouTube. It became a successful amateur radio community project and a showcase of innovations. This was a successful project and one which it is planned to repeat as the payload was recovered on the day. £2,500 to the RSGB outreach team to support free kits for a build-a-thon during British Science Week. Younger children built an FM radio, older children built a Morse kit. The level of interest was truly inspiring and the team were delighted to be able to send out as many kits as funding would allow. British Science Week is a fantastic way to introduce amateur radio to new audiences of all ages. We're delighted to see how radio amateurs from across the United Kingdom got involved. This project was jointly funded by the Radio Communications Foundation. £2,800 to run practical workshops at the 2025 RSGB convention. 3 separate workshops were run. Firstly, an all-day workshop covering programming of direct digital synthesis for radio frequency generation. Secondly, an introduction to the use of artificial intelligence for microprocessor programming. Thirdly, a practical antenna workshop. These workshops were heavily subscribed and one of the workshops was repeated in Blackpool the day before the 2026 Blackpool Rally. These were interesting projects and show amateur radio in a positive light. In many cases, they project amateur radio far more broadly than just internally within the amateur radio community. It's important that we are able to support these initiatives and show amateur radio in such a progressive way. The Legacy Fund is looking for applications for new projects to support, and all of the information about the Legacy Fund is on the RSGB website. Overall, I'm delighted to report your society remains in a strong financial position and is resilient enough to withstand the impacts of the current geopolitical events. The auditors identified no issues during their audit. Robust internal controls were observed. I thank all the staff and volunteers involved in the audit for this. We also plan to publish unaudited information showing the results and performance of the Society on the 30th of June 2026 to give members a view mid-year. We've received a question about the accounts from Tom Wiley, GM4 FDM. This will be shown on the screen and then read out, and then we will answer it.
I am a member for over 50 years. Why is there no mention of the QSL Bureau in the annual accounts or a report in the current RADCOM? How can the current accounts be complete and audited, signed off, when a portion of the Society's money is not accounted for? I've tried to ask this question before and was declined. The Bureau is outsourced. As a member, I am entitled to know how my money is being spent. How much does the outsourced Bureau cost the Society each year?
Thank you, Tom, for your question. And your long-term support of the Society as a member. The cost of the QSL Bureau are included within administrative expenses in the annual accounts and have been fully audited, with the disclosure compliant with accounting standards. If the disclosures were not compliant with accounting standards, this will be raised as an exception within the audit report on pages 6 to 10 of the accounts. As the Bureau is delivered through an external provider, the DARC, we do not publish the specific contractual costs due to commercial confidentiality. However, the board and staff keep all such arrangements under regular review to ensure good value for members. We also recognise how important the Bureau is and are keen to keep members informed as the new system evolves. We plan to feature an update in RADCOM on the QSL Bureau and the proposed new print-on-demand QSL service, which will enable members to generate and send physical cards directly from their electronic logs. We are aiming to introduce this service by the end of 2026. Colleagues at the DARC have recently completed the first quarter of operation, and we look forward to seeing further performance analysis. We'll show more details at our convention in October and the forthcoming RSGB 2027 yearbook. Whilst the core system is outsourced, the contribution of our volunteers and sub-managers remains central and very much appreciated. Further information is available to members on the RSGB website.
Thank you, Chris. We are required simply to receive the accounts at this meeting, and there is no requirement to vote. I will now move on to the next agenda item. The next agenda item is item 3, which is resolution 2 to appoint Peters, Ellsworthy and Moore as auditors and to authorise the board to fix their remuneration. The board is of the view that, at least for the time being, reappointment of our current auditors is in the best interest of the Society, both for reasons of cost and continuity. The board has therefore determined to recommend reappointment of the existing auditors. May I have a proposer, please?
Ben Lloyd, Golf Whiskey 4 Bravo, Mike Lima.
Thank you, Ben. May I now have a seconder, please?
Mark Savage, Mike 0, X-Ray India Charlie.
Thank you, Mark. The results of the voting independently managed by Civica Election Services show that the motion is carried by 450 votes to 6 with no abstentions. We now move to agenda item 4, which is resolution 3 to endorse 2 nominated directors. The candidates are Andrew Patrick Wood, known as Patrick Wood, 2E0IFB, and Graham John Smith, G4NMD, as directors of the RSGB to serve on the board. All were recommended by the RSGB Nominations Committee in accordance with the articles. In accordance with the Society's bylaws, voting has been conducted electronically by Civica Election Services. Could the Company Secretary, Stephen Purser, GW4 SHF, please announce the results of the ballot?
I can report that Andrew Patrick Wood, 2E0IFB, has received 420 votes, endorsing him as a nominated director. There were 15 votes against and no abstentions. I can also report that Graham John Smith, G4NMD, has received 435 votes, endorsing him as a nominated director. There were 8 votes against and no abstentions. Andrew Patrick Wood, 2E0IFB, and Graham John Smith, G4NMD, are therefore duly endorsed as nominated directors of the Society and will serve until the 2029 AGM as determined by term limits in the articles. Congratulations to both.
We now move to agenda item 5, which is resolution 4. This is to elect 2 directors to the RSGB to serve on the board. The candidates are Ben Lloyd, GW4 BML, Tony Miles, MM0 TMZ, and John E.A. Moss, G0 KTW. In accordance with the Society's bylaws, voting has been conducted electronically by Civica Election Services. Could the Company Secretary, Stephen Purser, GW4 SHF, please announce the results of the ballot?
I can report that Ben Lloyd, GW4 BML, has received 385 votes, electing him as a director. There were no votes against and no abstentions. I can report that Tony Miles, MM0 TMZ, has received 186 votes, electing him as a director. There were no votes against and no abstentions. I can report that John E.A. Moss, G0KTW, has received 287 votes, electing him as a director. There were no votes against and no abstentions. Ben Lloyd, GW4BML, and John E.A. Moss, G0KTW, are therefore duly elected as directors of the Society and will serve until the 2029 AGM. Congratulations to both. Finally, there were regional representative vacancies in 3 regions. A request for candidates was set out in the January 2026 RADCOM and online. At the closing date for nominations on 31 January 2026, 2 candidates had been duly nominated and I declare them elected unopposed. They are Region 2, John Grieve, GM3 RTI, formerly GM0 OTI, and Region 9, Jeremy Turner, M1CVZ. Both will serve a 3-year term until the 2029 AGM. There was no valid nomination for Region 7, but the board will look to fill this by co-option until the 2027 AGM.
Thank you, Stephen. On behalf of the board, I congratulate all the successful candidates. I would like to take this opportunity to thank a board member who comes to the end of his term at this AGM. Len Paget, GM0ONX, completes 2 terms as a director, in itself a significant achievement. But he also has other past service for the Society as a member of the Planning Advisory Committee, and then its chair, and as company secretary. On behalf of the members, I thank Len for his service to the Society over this long period. That concludes the annual general meeting. Thank you all for your contribution to it. We now move to the informal part of the proceedings, which begin with a message from our President, the RSGB President.
Hello everyone. Firstly, a very warm welcome to our AGM, wherever you are watching this, whether you're in Great Britain or elsewhere around the world. At last year's AGM, I explained that in the coming year, we would be focusing more on membership, which is one of the Society's 4 strategic priorities. Specifically, I said that we should aim to grow membership by 2%. That wasn't simply a number. It was a recognition that membership is the lifeblood of the Society. I am sure that you will appreciate that without members, the Society simply cannot flourish. Without members, we have no collective voice, no organised structure of spectrum, no structured support for the hobby that we all care about deeply. So today, I wish to focus on membership and the structure of the Society, on what we've been doing, in what direction we are travelling, and also where we hope to get to. This has been my first year as President and leading the Society, and I can say that it's been a very busy year indeed. We've seen real energy in our outreach work, fresh thinking with new ideas, new audiences, a willingness to reimagine how our hobby presents itself. At the same time, we've continued the vital and often unseen work of spectrum defence, not only in the UK, but working with our partner societies in the IARU as well. This work is really important, but none of it happens by accident. We have a strategy including 4 strategic priorities, and our staff and volunteer teams are working hard to put those into practice. The Society exists to advance interest in wireless communications in its fullest sense. And to fulfil that aim, what we do is far broader than many people realise. As well as providing many membership services, we also defend the radio spectrum for the whole amateur radio community, publish books, technical material, and digital content to support self-learning. administer the Radio Amateur Examination Service, and work closely with Ofcom, the UK regulator, representing the interests of UK radio amateurs. It is a substantial portfolio, and it is delivered by our hard-working HQ team and supported by hundreds of volunteers across the country. That level of voluntary commitment is something we should be very proud of. On behalf of the board, I want to place on record our sincere thanks to every member of staff and every volunteer whose work ensures these services are delivered and continually improved. Membership sustains all of that. There are, of course, tangible benefits to joining the society. We publish a respected range of publications: Radcom, Radcom Plus, and Radcom Basics. These can all be viewed in a new and exciting way across our very popular digital platform. Whether you choose to read via your web browser or prefer to download the mobile app for your portable devices, this platform enhances the user experience in many ways. Click on web addresses to take you straight to more information. Watch a video review, a presentation or webinar direct from the Radcom content. Search across Radcom publications going back 25 years and find that brilliant, memorable article you remember reading and want to find again. Receive notifications directly on your mobile device when new editions are published. You can also show sample publications to your friends and colleagues to highlight the benefits of being an RSGB member. Members in over 50 countries have downloaded the mobile app since its launch in October last year. We know that thousands more use the web app, which has been available since May 2025. I do recommend you check out our digital platform and download the mobile app if you haven't already done so. Let me talk about some of the other benefits of being a member of the RSGB. The opportunity to take part in our annual construction competition to showcase practical projects and also win a cash prize. This competition is open to every RSGB member, whether you've just gained your licence or have been a radio amateur for years. And it supports the Society's aim to encourage the development and enjoyment of practical skills. Planning and technical support. What I mean by that is that if you need help with getting your antenna systems planned and approved, we can help. RSGB members also have access to a detailed planning booklet that they can download from our website. The RSGB EMC committee can provide important support on many interference issues that you may encounter, including EMF. Our Brickwork scheme is available to RSGB affiliated clubs. Through those clubs, licensed amateur radio operators can discover the variety of what amateur radio has to offer. There are many varied activities centred around 5 key themes, so why not give them a try and discover something new? We provide comprehensive insurance services for our affiliated clubs, which number well over 450. These are real and practical member benefits, but they're only part of the bigger picture. Over the past year, members have also had access to webinars, contests, consultations and briefings, and attended our annual convention, which was a great success. Again, on our YouTube channel, there are many convention lectures available to watch from recent years, as well as hundreds more on other topics. Our practical activities at the National Hamfest and the workshops at the convention were very popular indeed last year. We've already started to take more of this activity out on the road, exclusively for RSGB members to attend. Just reading Radcom and looking at the content across our online communication channels shows how much we are really doing. And it all depends on membership. There's also something less tangible: belonging. In today's world, people don't just automatically join organisations or clubs. They join when they feel valued, when they feel heard, when they feel part of something worthwhile. Therefore, we recognise that retention matters just as much as recruitment. Sometimes it means more. And here's another very important fact. Around 3,000 people take their amateur radio examinations each year in the UK. Yes, 3,000. Each candidate has demonstrated commitment, interest and enthusiasm. In an ideal world, every one of them would see membership of the Society as the natural next step. So we are working to make that pathway clearer and more compelling. But there is also something else that is simple that we can all do. If you know someone with a passion for amateur radio, someone who benefits from the spectrum we defend, from the operating privileges we help protect, then why not encourage them to become a member as well? And we also offer flexible payment options to make membership accessible to all. It isn't about exclusivity. It's about collective strength and being part of our amateur radio family. Every additional member who joins strengthens that voice. Taking everything into consideration, we will be refreshing our membership strategy. In January this year, we held a 2-day membership strategy workshop to examine this important strategy properly.
You might say, why is that important? I'll tell you why it's important, because without members, we don't have a society, without Spectrum, we don't have a hobby, and so membership is absolutely a crucial part of everything we do.
We looked at the many different journeys into amateur radio, how someone first discovers the hobby, how they progress through exams, how they engage with clubs and other fellow radio amateurs, and how, at each stage, they interact with the RSGB. We were also supported by a professional facilitator to help us challenge our own thinking and examine new possibilities carefully. Members of the board, HQ staff and volunteers from across the Society attended the workshop to ensure a wide range of views and experiences was shared. It was a focused and busy 2 days with honest and open discussion conducted in a genuinely collaborative atmosphere. What became clear is that membership is not a single step and one size does not fit all. It is a journey. For many of us, including myself, it is a lifetime journey. But that journey may look different depending on age, geography, experience and personal circumstances. As part of that thinking, we are considering how our membership offering might better reflect those different journeys. We wish to strengthen our regional engagement across the UK, enhance support for those progressing through exams and their journey thereafter. These are examples of what we are considering as we look to sustain and strengthen the Society's future. What we want to do is to ensure membership remains relevant at every stage of someone's amateur radio life. The outputs of the workshop are now being shaped into structured work streams, and the outputs of these will be communicated to members as progress takes shape. This is not cosmetic change. It's about relevance, accessibility, and the long-term sustainability of the Society. Alongside this, the board has launched Project 30. You may have read about P30 in our Radcom strategy updates and other communication channels. Project 30 asks a simple but important question. What should the Society look like by 2030 to best serve its members? We wish to take a fresh look at the structure of the Society and how the different parts work together. Every now and again, it's right to take stock, to ensure that our structure and ways of working provide the best platform to support and facilitate our various activities. This is clearly not simply how we operate internally, but how we are viewed through the experience of our members. That final phrase is key. I ask for your full support as we take on this very important challenge together. So where does this leave us? Membership is not a side issue. It is the foundation of everything we do. It underpins spectrum defence. It underpins outreach. It underpins education. It is the lifeblood of the Society. And if we nurture it, thoughtfully, deliberately and collectively, then we will not simply maintain membership, we will strengthen it. And in strengthening our membership, we strengthen the future of amateur radio for all of us, at home and across the global amateur radio community. I send my best wishes to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you for that inspiring presentation. We now come to the section of the meeting where we deal with the presentation of trophies. So we will commence with the major society trophies for 2025. These will be announced by the President, Bob Beebe, GU4YOX, the General Manager, Steve Thomas, M1ACB, and myself. Details of the trophies, their recipients, and the full citations will be published in the RSGB website and on the RSGB website and in Radcom. So we'll start first with the Jock Kyle Memorial Award. This is awarded to the Scottish Club Society or RSGB member thought to have done the most in Scotland in the field of VHF during the past year. And this year it goes to David Gillis, MM0AMW. David has been a long-term supporter of 6-metre VHF activity in Scotland. He is very active and scarcely misses an opportunity from his remote part of Scotland. He is active on all modes and has built up an enviable score of countries and squares worked.
And next is the Jack Wiley Trophy. This is awarded to the Scottish Club Society or RSGB member thought to have done the most for amateur radio in Scotland during the past year. And this year it's awarded to David Kerr, GM4YXI, Keith Kerr, GM4YXI. Keith has been an active radio amateur since 1980. He's built a competitive and successful contest station using the contest call GM5X. Keith also was a member of several multi-op teams, including GR2HQ, GO2HQ, and GB2HQ. And he's also been on many D expeditions over the years, mainly in the Pacific area.
And now the Courtney Price Trophy. This is awarded for the most outstanding technical contribution to amateur radio. This year this goes to Phil Harmon, VK6PH, formerly G3WXO and formerly VK6APH. And this is for an alternative architecture for SDRs published in October 2025 Radcom. Sadly, Phil became silent key only a few days after winning this award. Phil's family told us he was ecstatic to receive the correspondence before he passed. He has been suffering from illness for the past 2 years, and writing articles for RSGB was very important to him. His family are convinced that it kept him with them for longer.
The Ostermeyer Trophy is awarded for the most meritorious description of a piece of home constructed or electronic equipment published in Radcom in 2025. And this year the award goes to Jeffrey Pike, GI0GDP, for a 10-watt amplifier for 2.3 gigahertz published in the August 2025 Radcom.
And now the Norman Keith Adams Prize, which is awarded for the most original article published in Radcom in 2025. This year this is awarded to Martin Baker, G0GMB, and Edward Jones, G3ZLX. And this was for the Ultrasonic Family event at the RSGB National Radio Centre, article published in October 2025 Radcom.
The Bennett Prize, G8PF, is awarded for any significant contribution or innovation which furthers the art of radio communications. And this year the award goes to Ross Wilkinson, G6JYB, for antenna pattern measurement at home, published in the November 2025 Radcom.
And now the Wortley Talbot Trophy. which is awarded for the most outstanding experimental work in amateur radio. This goes to Gwyn Griffiths, G3ZIL, for his article Upper HF Openings at Night, One Effect of Travelling Ionospheric Disturbances, which was published in the September 2025 RADCOM.
The Kenwood Trophy is awarded for a significant contribution to training and development in amateur radio within the UK. And this year it's awarded to the Bath-based distance learning team, led by Steve Hartley, G0FUW. The team comprises some 20 tutors who help small groups of around 6 students. Steve and team were awarded the Kenwood Trophy in 2012, but they've sustained their impact and now offer online training for both intermediate and full level exams. Since starting in 2011, the Bath-based distance learning team has supported over 1,100 passes at full level, with pass rates well above the national average. The board is delighted to recognise this significant ongoing contribution to helping amateurs progress within the hobby by awarding them the Kenwood Trophy for the second time, a unique achievement.
Congratulations. Now the Harold Rose Trophy, awarded for outstanding contribution to 50 megahertz. And this goes to Lance Collister, W7GJ. Lance, W7GJ, is one of the leading 50 megahertz de-expeditioners. His trips to remote locations have activated many new countries on 6 over the last 20 years. In 2024, his 2024 expedition to ZD9, Tristan da Cunha, said to be the most remotely inhabited island in the world, was an epic. And in 2025, he followed that with a trip to Pigeon Island in Timbuktu, province of the Solomon Islands.
The Louis Varney Cup is awarded for advances in space communications. And this year it goes to David Bowman, G0MRF, in recognition of his work in developing UHF, VHF, FM transponder for the Jovian 1 satellite and development of a 435 MHz receive preamp and 2400 MHz driver amplifier for ground stations, as well as his instrumental leadership in the design and development of the next generation FunCube Plus CubeSat, which AMSAT is currently implementing.
And now the Fraser Shepherd Award. This is awarded for research into microwave applications for radio communication. And this year it goes to John Worsnop, G4BAO. And this is for his work on the innovative Kent 24 GHz WebSBR project, which is used to investigate 24 GHz openings across the North Sea. With an antenna at 85 meters at ASL, with a clear view, it has a 90-degree sector antenna centered on Rotterdam. Work was also contributed by other PSC members, with John BAO preparing the gigahertz hardwire, whilst Gwyn, G3ZIL, helped with software, and Jim, G3YLA, focusing on meteorology. John wanted to express his appreciation for the work done in the project by the rest of the WebSDR team, namely Gwyn, G3ZIL for the logger software, and Thanet Radio Infrastructure Group, namely Matthew Payne, M0LMK, Paul McVeigh, M5AAD, and Phil Borman, G0JBA.
The Don Cameron G4STT Award is awarded for an outstanding contribution to low power amateur radio communications. And this year the award goes to Daphne Newsom, G7ENA. Daphne has been an active member of the QRP club for many years. In 2019 she became the membership secretary and has served the 4,000 members of the club extremely well in that time, managing the annual subscriptions, welcoming new members, renewing lapsed members, and attending to missing journals.
And now the Les Barkley Memorial Award, which is awarded to recognise those who have made excellent contributions to propagation research and understanding, ranging from conducting original research through to spreading knowledge about propagation and inspiring interest amongst amateurs. You must excuse my pronunciation of the award winner. It goes to Carl Lutzelschwab, K9LA. US-based Carl, K9LA, is an icon in the field of radio propagation. He has been a good friend to RSGB Propagation Studies Committee, often offering advice, helping out with problems, and delivering presentations at the annual RSGB convention. His research work covers solar cycles, propagation predictions, ionospheric physics, and much more. His website also contains many features on radio propagation, all written with meticulous attention to detail.
And now we turn to the Calcutta Key, awarded for outstanding service to international friendship through amateur radio. And I'm delighted to announce the winner is the CW Ops CW Academy team, received by Bob Carter, WR7Q, and Roland Smith, K7OJL, the two co-administrators of the scheme. CW Academy is the flagship training and mentoring program of the International Amateur Radio Organization, CW Ops, dedicated to fostering proficiency in Morse code, CW as we call it, across the global amateur radio community. CW Academy's impact on the amateur radio community has been significant, with thousands of students having participated and gone on to become active CW operators, all helping to keep Morse code alive and thriving in the 21st century. Part of the rationale behind the program is to encourage students to develop ongoing friendships internationally through Morse. This is the main criteria of the award of the Calcutta Key, and the board is very pleased to be able to recognise how successful this has been with the award of the Key to CW Academy. Congratulations. And now I turn to the Founders Cup. This is awarded for outstanding service and services to the Society. And the winner is Len Paget, GM0ONX. Today, Len Paget GM0ONX retires from the RSGB board after 13 years of dedicated service to the RSGB at a senior level. Len has served 4 3-year terms as director, as well as a year as company secretary. Len has carried out invaluable work as liaison between the board and the regional teams, the RSGB examination teams, the Emerging Technology Coordination Committee, and the Planning Advice Committee. These teams all provide core RSGB services to members, and he has devoted significant work and personal time to these duties. Len has a strong personal attachment to RayNet, having served as a volunteer during the Lockerbie disaster. During his time away from the RSGB board, Len led the process of establishing RayNet as an independent partner organisation to the RSGB. Throughout his service, Len has championed the needs of RSGB members and his fellow radio amateurs in Scotland. In addition to his service on the board, Len has been both a member of and has led the Planning Advice Committee, work that he will continue to do. For this outstanding service to the Society, the board are very pleased to award Len the Founders Cup. I now turn to the Board Special Award. This is awarded for years of excellent service to RSGB members. The recipient this year is Mark Olgar, M1 MPA, awarded for his long service to the Society upon retirement after 26 years as commercial and membership manager. Chris Danby, G0DWV, awarded for his long service to the Society upon retirement after 22 years as advertising agent. Graham Sherville, G3VZV. The board gives a special award for both IARU Region 1 satellite coordination and attending numerous IARU interim and full conferences at his own expense over many years. Richard Constantine, G3UGF. The board wishes to record its sincere appreciation to Richard Constantine, G3UGF, for his many years of dedicated service as QSL Bureau Manager to the Society and the wider amateur radio community. During his tenure, he ensured the efficient and reliable operation of one of the RSGB's most valued member services, overseeing the handling and distribution of millions of QSL cards with care and attention to detail. His professionalism and commitment have been widely recognised. In recognition of his service on retirement, he was presented with a special board award in the form of a commemorative glass plaque. The board extends its sincere thanks and very best wishes to Richard for a long and happy retirement. And so, following the announcement of our awards and trophies, excuse me, I'm delighted to put on record that the Society has received 2 awards this year. The RSGB National Radio Centre, or the NRC as it is often referred to, is located within the grounds of Bletchley Park. The centre provides the opportunity for members of the public to get up close and personal with the history and technology of radio communications. In 2025, the NRC was recognised in TripAdvisor's Traveller's Choice Awards. Winners of this award are in the top 10% listings around the world on TripAdvisor. In October last year, at a glittering awards ceremony in London, the RSGB National Radio Centre team also beat 2 other finalists to win the 2025 Sir Arthur Clarke Education and Outreach Team Award, which is given for inspiring all generations about amateur satellites by providing a unique insight into the world of radio communications. The awards are organised by the British Interplanetary Society. I would like to congratulate RSGB General Manager Steve Thomas, M1ACB, the NRC Coordinator Martin Baker, G0GMB, and their team of 70 NRC volunteers, whose passion and dedication have led to these awards.
Thank you, Bob, and congratulations to all the winners. I would now like to ask Will Richardson, 2E0WYA, to announce the winners of the construction competition.
Thanks, Stuart, and hello all. I'd like to thank everyone who submitted an entry for this year's competition. We hope to feature some of the projects in future RADCOM issues. For each category winner, will receive £150. The judges have also chosen an honourable mention for 2 of the categories. These entrants will win a £50 RSGB book voucher each. The overall winner will also receive an additional £150 and the Pat Hawker G3 VA award. Turning to the first category, antennas. The winner is Gareth Evans, G4XAT, for his horizontal/vertical string polarized antenna project. Gareth presented a very neat way to switch a Yagi antenna from horizontal polarization to vertical polarization using some 3D printed parts and a length of cord. The judges thought that this simple mechanical approach was an elegant, low-cost way to solve the problem. An honourable mention in this category also goes to William Cooper, G7FDD, for his cryosuction enhanced earth rod project. The judges were extremely impressed with the originality of the use of cryosuction and felt that it deserves suitable recognition. The next category is the beginners category, and the winner and recipient of the Gavin Nesbitt MM1 BXF trophy is Sam Green, MI9WHD, for his QSL logger project. This is a neat solution for when you're on the top of a hill and away from the station PC. The judges were impressed with Sam's approach to the problem. In construction excellence, the winner is Dave Crump, G8GKQ, for his comprehensive RF analyzer project. Dave built a comprehensive and high specification RF analyzer using a former HP Spectrum analyzer, retaining many of the HP components. The judges were impressed with the repurposing of this equipment and the design and construction are exemplary. An honourable mention in this category also goes to Kevin Jackson, AA3XV and G4NEJ, for his call sign International Beacon Project Tracker project. This project by Kevin was thought to be well suited to replicating in a club environment and then for use as a visual aid for explaining propagation to the public in an outreach environment. The judges were particularly impressed with the PCP etched maps and professional finish of the project. In the innovation category, the winner is Peter Williams, G4NPU, for his CW strain gauge key project. This new take on a paddle key from Peter used strain gauges rather than contacts. The judges like this, particularly because of its novelty and promise of improved performance. In the software category, the winner is Amy Pandit, M7NYQ, for his satellite tracking application for a Raspberry Pi Zero project. The tracking of satellites brings a host of complexities, such as changing Doppler effects on the up and down links. And the judges thought that Amy's approach was elegant and useful. In the outreach category, the winner is Ken Elliott, GM4NTX, for his Morse microbits project. Ken described his group STEM activity using two types of 3D printed Morse keys to introduce the principles of radio frequency selection and network addresses. The judges liked the combination of different aspects of the hobby to illustrate and teach complexities in an engaging manner. And now to the overall construction competition winner. And the winner and recipient of the Pat Hawker G3VA Award is Dave Crump, G8GKQ, for his comprehensive RF analyzer. The judges were extremely impressed with the quality and detail associated with Dave's project. The decision to award Dave the overall winner's prize was unanimous. Congratulations to all winners and honourable mentions. The judges would like to praise indeed all construction entrants, including those who were not mentioned, for taking the time to bring their projects to the attention of the RSGB.
Thank you, Will. Members have been able to submit written questions to the board in advance of the meeting and also to register to ask questions live on video via Zoom. We will also take questions from the YouTube live chat. Whilst we welcome all questions, due to time constraints, priority will be given to questions submitted in advance and to questions asked by RSGB members on the live chat. To ensure that as many different people as possible are included, we will only share 2 questions per person or organisation during the AGM. We didn't receive any registrations to ask a question via Zoom, so we will begin with some written questions submitted in advance. David Palmer, G7URP, will facilitate this question and answer session.
Thank you, Stuart. So first we go to an advanced question. I'm going to ask this of Will. It's about overseas members, and it's been submitted by Steve Morton, G8SFR. The RSGB serves members in the UK very well with its current regional organisation, with regional reps, pages in Radcom, groups on Facebook, etc. What about overseas members? Shouldn't they have a region? Maybe not in the traditional sense, as we are too widespread geographically, but maybe we could have some sort of region for overseas members. So, and then there's another, that's actually to Will. Over to you, Will.
Thanks, David. Hi, Steve, and thanks very much indeed for your question. I'd first like to echo your thoughts, if I may, on our regional organisation. We are incredibly fortunate to have a great and passionate team of regional reps, along with other regionally focused content and coverage as well. I think that you've asked a great question, if I may say so. It actually connects with a much bigger topic we're going to be exploring as part of our refreshed membership strategy we heard Bob speak about earlier in his President's Review. And just to recap on that, our 4 membership work streams are structured around, firstly, how we engage with our members in person. Secondly, how we engage with our members virtually. Thirdly, ensuring that we understand and focus on those items which matter the most to our members. In consulting speak, if you forgive me, what I call moments that matter. And fourthly, how we engage and support and grow our international membership. There'll be many things that we explore as part of that fourth international work stream, and I can make sure that your idea is included in that mix too. In fact, to help us as we explore what our future international membership offer could look like and comprise, we'd love to hear from our international membership on what membership means to them as an international member, and indeed their thoughts on how this important area could be developed further. Thanks for your question, Steve.
Thank you, Will. Our next question has also been asked in advance. In fact, we have two questions on similar subjects. So these I'm going to ask Len to take these. They're both about syllabus and exams. The first one was submitted by Essex Ham Training Team MX0SXA. Despite promises of more transparency, tutors and online training groups continue to be kept in the dark about exam and syllabus developments. We've heard rumours of revision apps, RSGB study videos, release of questions from the exam bank and syllabus 2.0, but nothing concrete. The last minutes from ESC and ESRG were published 2 years ago. Can the board comment on why ESC and ESRG continue to operate in secret and are unwilling to keep trainers and clubs informed? And then a second question also on syllabus and exams was submitted by John Haynes, 2E0 IAI. In the annual report of the Examination Standards Committee report dated May 25, you said the ESRG has completed reviewing the full level bank, which has been passed to ESC for checking prior to release. A year later, we are still waiting. Can you please confirm when the full exam question bank will be released? Len.
Turning to Pete's question first. Syllabus 2.0 has on occasion been discussed within the exam team, but there are no current proposals to move to this version of the syllabus. There are early stage discussions with other national societies about an update of the HARIC standard, and it's thought prudent to wait a while to see if this is likely to have an impact on any future 2.0 syllabus. The Exams and Syllabus Review Group is not a committee and reports to the Exam Standards Committee. It therefore does not produce minutes on its own. The Exam Standards Committee does, however, produce minutes, but these are normally not approved until the next annual general meeting. As this only happens once a year, the 2025 minutes would normally be expected to be published after the next ESC meeting due on the 9th of May. In addition to the minutes, the ESC produces an annual report, and we would expect that to be published also after the annual meeting. Turning to John's question, bit of good news here. I'm pleased to confirm that the question bank for full level was released yesterday. It was decided that to release it as a web interface rather than a downloadable list, which could go out of date quite quickly. This is an interactive page which allows candidates and tutors to generate their own mock questions and training questions based on the actual question bank. It is hoped to roll out this facility to other exam levels as soon as the technology is proven. Back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Len. Next is another advanced question. I'm going to ask this of Ben. It's about younger people and digital communication. It's been submitted by Jake Franks, M7 PBF. What is the RSGB doing to engage younger amateur radio enthusiasts and encouraging digital communication methods which are growing in popularity, such as LoRa and MeshCore? In our society, we are seeing increasing interest from younger members owing to the crossover between technology hobbies and radio communication. Could an initiative or promotional funding be considered to take advantage of this current interest and encourage new, younger members to join the RSGB? Ben.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you for your question, Jake. It's something we're putting. It's something we've been putting a lot of energy into because we're seeing exactly the same trend you mentioned. Younger people are increasingly drawn to the hobby through digital technology, coding, and experimentation, and we want the RSGB to be right there with them. Over the past year, we've taken a very deliberate approach to promoting the digital side of amateur radio, both to newcomers and to more experienced operators who want to explore modern modes. You may have seen one of our biggest outreach activities last September when the RSGB outreach team launched a high-altitude balloon carrying a LoRa digipeater, as Bob said in his report. We encouraged amateurs to build or program their own LoRa trackers and try to hit the digipeater from the ground. The response was fantastic. It generated real excitement, brought new licensees into the hobby, and saw a large number of young people getting hands-on with radio, electronics, and digital communication. Alongside that, we've been very active in youth-focused events. We're attending several Scout and Girl Guiding jamborees where we ran practical, engaging activities that always draw a crowd. These events consistently spark curiosity, and it's brilliant to see how quickly young people connect with radio when they can try it for themselves. We've also run a number of build-a-thons over the past 12 months, giving youngsters the chance to assemble simple electronic kits. Watching their faces light up when the project comes to life is generally one of the most rewarding parts of what we do. At the start of 2025, the youth team also launched a dedicated DMR net aimed at schools and young operators across the UK and overseas. It runs fortnightly and has grown steadily, with new young members joining every sessions. One of the most encouraging developments has been seeing different young operators now confident enough to chair the net themselves. The conversations range from what they've been experimenting with to aspects of the hobby excite them most, and the confidence growth has been remarkable. As an outreach team, we are still a relatively small group, which is why I think we've achieved over the past 12 months, what we've achieved over the past 12 months, is generally fascinating. After our 2026 planning meeting took place in December 2025, we've set ourselves up for another strong year of youth engagement. We've already begun work with British Science Week, where we offered a limited number of free kit building activities to youth groups across the UK. The response was incredible. Over 250 applications came in before we had to close entries due to the number of kits we had free to give out, representing more than 1,500 young people. There could have been more if we'd have left the applications open. Thanks to additional support from the Legacy Fund and the RCF, we were able to distribute kits to 150 youth organisations, and the feedback we've received so far has been overwhelmingly positive. The reports will be shown in Radcom Basics in the near future. So as you can see from just a few examples, we're doing everything we can to promote amateur radio to young people, whether through digimodes, hands-on build-a-thons, or wider outreach. And we're always looking for new ideas and new energy. So if you'd like to get involved or have suggestions, we'd be delighted to welcome you into the team, Jake, sorry. So thanks for that, David.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Ben. Now we come to the first of our questions that have been asked on our live chat today. Just a reminder, if you do that, please do put your first name and your call sign, if you have one, within every message. Excuse me. So this is the first question from our live chat today. And this, I'm going to ask Stuart to take this. It's been submitted by Lawrence James, G2DD. How many active licensed radio amateurs, shortwave listeners, are there in the UK currently, according to Ofcom? Interested to understand what the ratio looks like. Stuart.
Thank you, Lawrence. There is no definitive number of radio amateurs in the Ofcom database because it's not as up to date as any of us would like. But a number like 70,000 seems to be the number that we deal with. But you asked an interesting question, which is active radio amateurs. And Mark Jones and I did a little bit of work about a year ago now, and where we looked at the RSGB database against the people who were active in a number of activities, where we could sort of get information off the web. And about 50% of the UK amateurs that were active in all of the areas we studied were members of the society. So hopefully, as Ofcom remove the duplications in their database, and as they look at people who haven't renewed, we will get a better picture for how many licenses there are, and we will also continue our studies to see how many of them are active in various ways that we're able to. Thank you, David.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. This is now another question being asked in advance. I'm going to ask Steve to take this. It's on affiliated clubs indemnity insurance, and it was submitted by Kevin Earl, G8VJU. I realise that the board may not have details to hand, but can RSGB provide feedback to members on the subject on the public indemnity insurance that is offered to affiliated radio clubs at no additional cost? In particular, I would be interested if RSGB monitor the number of claims from members and the outcomes from the insurers over the years in order to assess that the insurance is adequate for members' needs, please. Steve.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Kevin. I'll do my best to answer this one in a way that isn't too boring because it's all related to insurance. So you're quite right to say that we offer it's £15 million worth of public liability insurance to clubs and groups who affiliate to the RSGB. Hopefully, it's interesting to hear something about how that works while I answer the question. You'll see from our website, rsgb.org, that and just search for insurance, that's the best way to find it, that we work with an insurance broker who specialises in working with not-for-profit organisations. We have the policy and the schedule on the website so that clubs can see all the terms and conditions. The public liability insurance is actually part of our company combined insurance for all of our business activities at the RSGB. You can see from the schedule that the public liability insurance is just section 10 within that schedule. That's the only part which is extended out to clubs and groups through affiliation. The terms and conditions in there are really important, so I would encourage you to read that section if you're relying on it to cover any club events. What that means, though, that it's part of our combined insurance, is that we consider the insurance cover annually as part of our business insurance review. So we check with our broker that it's appropriate. So we do check that it's appropriate. But individual groups must check the schedule to see if it's adequate for their needs. It's slightly different. You can also contact the broker directly, and we have their contact details on the website. That's often the best way to do it. I did actually check with the brokers yesterday to specifically answer your question, and they've not seen any claims under that part of the policy this year. So we do review it. No claims so far, but we always welcome questions about it or questions direct to the broker, but nothing so far this year. Hopefully that answers your question and explains a bit of the background about how it works as well.
Thank you, Steve. Another question sent in advance now. I'm going to ask Len to take this. It's about the number of Foundation Youth licensees. It's submitted by Dougie Kinnear, MM1 OCD. What has been the number of Foundation Youth licenses gained in the year 2025-26 compared to year 2024-25? How many previously licensed Youth Foundation holders are moving to intermediate and full? Len.
Thanks for that question, Dougie. Using the cohort information from 2024 and 2025, 11 candidates moved from foundation to intermediate, 2 of them moving further on to full level, the youngest of these being only 8 years old. Full information on exams, etc., age profiles, and other levels can be found in the Exam Standards Committee annual report. It gives full details of and breakdown of these things and includes the information you're looking for other age profiles. We normally expect this year's report to be published shortly after the Exam Standards Committee meeting, which is due to take place in May, 9th of May 2026. And so I'd encourage you to have a look at that if you want to have a look at how the profile of those taking exams breaks down.
Thank you, Len. I hope that helped, Dougie. Next, we have two questions sent in advance on similar subjects. They both concern 5 megahertz, and I'm going to ask Bob to answer these. First one was submitted by John Fellows, G6JYB. Could the board please explain the current RSGB policy as to seeking the UK's adherence to the resolution at WRC 15 to the amendment to the radio regulations to allocate 5.3515 to 5.366.5 megahertz to the amateur service, given that the radio regulations have the status of an international treaty? Why does the United Kingdom not adhere to it? And then the second question was submitted by Paul Gaskell, G4MWO. August 2027 sees UK 5 MHz turn 25, the first to permit regular 5 MHz activity in 2002, precursor to a worldwide WRC 15 60 metre band. But why is the UK still waiting to be granted the WRC allocation in full? Please redouble efforts with the MOD and Ofcom to allow full access, and if not, say why. The society, I know, fears losing existing channels, but this is largely unfounded. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. We owe this to the original RSGB 5 MHz pioneers, including myself, some of whom are sadly silent key now. Bob.
Thank you for your questions, both to John and Paul. The Society is fully aware of the WRC 15 allocation of 5.351.5 to 5.366.5 megahertz to the amateur service, and we maintain regular dialogue with Ofcom on all matters relating to spectrum access. In the UK, however, access to 5 megs continues to be provided on a shared non-interference basis, as I'm sure you know, with the primary user. Whilst the international allocation exists within the radio regulations, its implementation at a national level here in the UK is subject to domestic spectrum management considerations, particularly where there are incumbent primary users. It's worth noting that the UK has historically had access to a broader set of discrete frequencies in the 5 MHz band under a shared agreement with different technical conditions to those defined in the WRC 15 allocation. That said, we do recognise that there are small gaps within the WRC segment that are not currently available in the UK due to primary user requirements. RSGB most recently explored a potential adjustment with Ofcom during the license review process, including a possible frequency swap to change these gaps. However, this was not supported by the primary user, and as a result, no changes are currently anticipated. In the meantime, it remains very important that UK amateurs operate strictly within the terms of the UK licence. And I'm sure you know this, that Ofcom has issued a significant number of compliance warnings in this area, and maintaining good operating discipline is essential to protecting continued access to the band. So thanks to John and Paul, and I hope that's answered your question, David.
Thank you, Bob. Now we have another advanced question for you, but just a reminder, you can ask questions now on the live chat. We just ask that you put your name and your call sign in every message. So the next question is about non-UK exam candidates. I'm going to ask Len to take this. And the first, and it's submitted, by Trevor, G3AKA. In 2025, how many of the candidates for each type of RSGB exam took the exam from outside the UK and Crown dependencies? A, foundation, B, intermediate, C, full, and D, direct to full. Len.
Hi Trevor, thanks for that question. This information is recorded, but unfortunately it's not recently reported to board. I will ask that you're provided with this information as soon as possible after the AGM.
Okay, thank you, Len. Another advanced question. This is about shortwave listeners. I'm going to ask Mark to take this. It's submitted by Steve Green, SWL. My question is simply, what is the RSGB going to do to promote the SWL, which is a shortwave listener, contingent to this hobby, bearing in mind that not every enthusiast wishes to become licensed. Many get their enjoyment from just listening to the different wave bands. Today's SWLs will probably be tomorrow's operators. And he puts in brackets 55 years as an SWL, many as a maritime mobile. Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Steve, for answering asking that question. The RSGB supports SWLs by providing technical resources, awards, and a community for those who enjoy monitoring signals across the shortwave bands. I'll just break it up into sort of three sections, really. The support and resources that are available currently to SWLs include propagation insights to help listeners understand how radio signals travel, publications. Members can receive RADCOM, equally useful for listening and transmitting. Band plans. The RSGB maintains band plans ranging from 1.5 megahertz to 30 megahertz for shortwave to help enthusiasts know where to listen for different modes. And for those without their own equipment, the RSGB provides information allowing anyone to listen to shortwave radio via the internet. In the awards and recognition category, all awards currently offered are open to SWLs as well as licensed amateurs. SWLs require confirmation through EQSL, not accepted for licensed amateurs, but for SWLs only, or physical cards, or a list of QSOs heard countersigned by 2 licensed operators or a club officer. In terms of getting involved, local clubs, RSGB affiliated clubs welcome SWLs. There's licensing support available, so if a listener decides to move from listening to transmitting, the RSGB provides the information and guidance needed to obtain an Ofcom amateur radio license. There are, of course, in addition to that, special interest groups, and the Society has links with a variety of groups, such as the RAIBC, which provides equipment loans and audio literature for disabled listeners and amateurs. But having said all that, if there are other suggestions regarding how the RSGB can develop further or promote the inclusion of SWLs, then please do get in touch with me. My details can be found on the director's webpage. It's Mike 0 X-Ray India Charlie at rsgb.org.uk. Thank you for the question, Steve.
Thank you, Mark. Now we have another question from our live chat today. I'm going to ask Steve to take this because it regards the convention. It's been submitted by Chris Colclough, G1 VDP. A quick one about the RSGB convention. Why is it that now there are very few DXpedition presentations? It could be done over the internet and many more would come to see them. Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks for your support as well, Chris. Much appreciated. So I have been the convention chair. I think I did it for, it was either 3 or 4 years. I can't remember which. Absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. My favourite event of the year. But we've now got Pete Joyce, M0OFM, who's the chair, volunteer chair of the convention, and I think he's actually been to your club to speak about it, Chris, if I remember rightly. So hopefully, well, I'm sure you've been in contact with Pete about this. The DXpeditions, they are always absolutely interesting. At the convention, we have about 50 different speakers across 4 streams. And it's an immensely complicated event to put together, but thoroughly enjoyable and very well worth it. What we try and get a mix of different interests there. We want to encourage newcomers. We want to service the people that have been going for years. We want to do all sorts of things. and it's very difficult to get that mix exactly right. We know that. We work very hard at it. There's a team of about, I don't know, 10 of us, I think, that try and pull that all together, with Pete now as the chair of it. There's a lot of considerations in there. However, we always look for some de-expedition talks if we can get them. I think you've also asked about whether they would be remote or in person. That can be difficult because people who go to the convention expect to see the speakers in person. The other thing we have to do with the convention, I don't think any of this is really secret. It's an expensive event to run, and all we try and do with it is we try and cover our costs. So it's always very, very tricky just to get that balance exactly right. When I say cover our costs, I mean last year we were probably within about £1,000 of covering our costs. The year before, about £100. I am not exaggerating that we get the very most we can get out of the convention for the money that we've got, hopefully without charging too much for everybody to attend. It's a great event. Everybody's support for it is wholly welcomed. We really appreciate it. But I absolutely take your point about the de-expeditions, Chris. I'm not sure about the balance we've got for this year, but we absolutely take it, and we enjoy talking to all of the people that go. We take a lot of feedback from the people that attend as well, and of course we've had quite a selection of de-expedition talks over the last few years, but the mix changes all of the time. Absolutely take that. I hope that explains some of the background to it, Chris. You may know some of that through talking to Pete anyway, but hopefully everybody else now knows what we try and achieve with the convention.
Thank you, Steve. So now we have another question asked in advance. It's about mock exams, so I'm going to ask Len to take this, please. It's been submitted by Baz Petrozin. I do your mock exams and I usually get 3 to 4 wrong answers. Is the mock exam more or less what to expect on the exam, as I'm worried about failing my test? Thanks. Len.
Hi, Baz. You don't actually say which level you're sitting at, but so we have already initiated a web-based facility to allow you to actually generate your own test questions from the actual question bank rather than random mock questions. It's hoped that these will be rolled out to other exam levels as soon as the technology is proven. And it will allow you not only to produce a full mock exam, it will allow you to have a look at such areas that you are having difficulty with and try and give you additional information for you to go and try and study further on these questions. So this is very much a case of a work in hand. But as they say, we expect this to be rolled out sooner rather than later.
And just kind of come back on that, Len, because I know a lot of people are really interested in this. Do you have any concept of the timescale to release intermediate and foundation question bank as well?
What was the question again?
Do we have any feel about when the question bank will also be released for the intermediate and foundation license questions?
Well, so the actual question bank has already been reviewed and is ready to go. With the ESRG spent a lot of time and effort to making sure the questions were fit for purpose. The current agreement we have with the Exam Standards Committee is only for the foundation, it's only for the advanced exam, that being at the time the one with the highest failure rate. It is intended to go back on the 9th of May to seek permission to roll out the facility to other questions, other levels, I should say, and it is hoped with a fair wind, it should be something that happens in a matter of months. But what is it they say, that if you want a timescale for technology, think of it, then double again. But I'd be disappointed if we don't see it in a matter of months, assuming the ESC committee approves the release of this part of the question bank.
Lovely. Okay, thank you very much, Len.
Forgive me if I missed it in your explanation. The questioner was asking about whether the mock papers were live questions, and I believe all the mock papers that are up there are live questions pulled out of the question bank. Is that correct?
They are a sample of the question bank. They are real questions. I think that's a question that you're looking for. But they are changed from time to time. And this is the problem is you're only getting a snapshot of these things. If you have, say, a particular difficulty with antennas, with this new facility, you'll be able to go and generate questions solely on that particular item, or a full mock paper, or in multiple sections that are causing you difficulty. You see, this is a very flexible tool, and we're keen to roll it out as quickly as possible.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Len, and to Stuart there as well. So now on to another question asked in advance. It's about the call book, so I'm going to ask Steve to take this. It's been submitted by Steve Morton, G8SFR. Would the Society consider offering a service to members that gives them access to an online call book? The French regulator, ANFR, offers such a service that lets you search on name, call sign, postal code. And there's a web address there on the screen as well. So over to you, please, Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Steve, and thank you for everything you do for the ETCC as well. So ANFR, they've got a bit of an advantage over us. As you quite rightly say, they are the French regulator, so equivalent to Ofcom in this country. And therefore, they've got access to the live licensing data, which we don't have. We do receive licensing data from Ofcom once a year under the agreement to publish the data in the RSG yearbook, or call book as it used to be called. And that has operated for many years. I have the historic versions on the bookshelf in the office to prove it. I've got them going back to the 1950s and probably beyond. We use those to help people reapply for their lapsed licenses. So they're a bit dusty, but they're still in use. Ofcom also publish license status data now under their open data principles. And that can be found on their website, on the Ofcom website. So some of the data is available when Ofcom make it available. I know some websites link to that Ofcom data, but I do hear some complaints about their website those websites not keeping it up to date with the latest Ofcom data. So there are some risks there. I looked this morning actually at the last update from Ofcom, and it was on the 25th of March. But it does only include call signs and issue dates, no details of the call sign holder. So we can't do much more at the moment, I'm afraid, Steve. But we'll keep an eye on it. My concern is if we take just the data just once a year, which is when we get it, that would be out of date very quickly. So we'll see what we can do, but nothing at the moment, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Next, another question asked in advance. It's about contest sanctions, so I'm going to ask Stuart to take this. It's been submitted by Paul O'Kane, EI5DI. In 2022, the board stated, "It is clear that recent actions by the Russian Federation and their military have crossed a line, and the RSGB cannot in this instance remain neutral. In view of the more recent crossing a line actions by the USA and the Israel Defence Forces, why has the board not already applied the same contesting sanctions to the USA and Israel as it has applied to Russia and Belarus? Any response to the effect that nothing has changed will be met with the derision it reserves." Stuart.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for the question. The RSGB board has a stated policy that it will review the situation from time to time, and it briefly discussed the matter at its meeting on the 21st of March 2026. This will be noted in its minutes. And the decision was that a subgroup of the board should meet to discuss the matter further. Unfortunately, very heavy demands on directors' diaries in the run-up to the AGM, with the various sort of events that we also had to do besides preparation, has meant that it wasn't possible to hold this meeting. The issue will now be a matter for the new board to decide, and I'm sure that they will provide an update in the near future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Next, another question asked in advance. Just another reminder that you can ask questions on the live chat. We just ask you to put your name and your call sign in the message as well. So this is a question asked in advance. It's about digital Radcom subscription. So I'm going to ask Chris to take this. This has been submitted by Paul Clark, M7PCU. Currently, RSGB membership benefits include a printed and mailed Radcom magazine each month, with the option of receiving the publications digitally via the RSGB app. Will the board review the current arrangement and consider offering a discount to those members who choose not to receive the printed edition, funded by the potential savings of printing and postage costs and taking into account the ecological benefit? Chris.
Thank you. Hi, Paul. Thank you for your question. We're pleased to advise members this has been in place since launch. We launched a digital platform in March 2025 and the mobile app in October 2025. With the launch of the digital platform, we introduced a new membership rate for choosing a digital magazine over a postal copy. We're able to offer a single digital rate worldwide. This offers a larger saving for international members. New members get to choose the type of membership that suits them on joining, and existing members can switch to digital membership from their next renewal date. Members can contact membership services to amend their choice. Being able to offer reduced prices for digital membership was a key part of the digital strategy, and we're seeing a growing number of members select digital delivery. We encourage all members to select digital delivery. Thank you.
And if I can add something to that, David and Chris, people won't be surprised because I love talking about the digital platform and the app. What I want to add is, as well as our current editions, the digital platform includes an archive of around 350 editions of Radcom, covering 26 years now, back to the year 2000. We've got more editions to add in the future, but we wanted to concentrate on getting the platform right to start with. We also have every edition of Radcom Plus in there, and nearly every edition of Radcom Basics. We loaded all the editions that were in a suitable format, as some of the very first editions were just web postings. We also use the platform to host the affiliated club's newsletter, which is produced each month. And we have sample copies of each of our Radcom family of publications in there. The samples are open to everybody, so non-members can see what we offer. If you watch the demonstration video that I made at the RSGB convention last year, you can access that particular Radcom edition I used in the video and follow along with the links and the videos just to get used to using it. We want everybody to try the platform on the web or on tablet and mobile with the version available, which is in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. You can go to rsgb.org/Radcom to find out more about it, to read the Radcom family on the web if you want to, or to find out a bit more about the platform. Remember, this is a member's benefit, and we're offering a modern way to read and interact with our publications while protecting those benefits which members pay for.
Thank you, Steve. Similar sort of theme, really. This is a question also sent in advance about the paper Radcom. So I'm going to ask Stuart this time to take this, please. Submitted by Robert Hammond, G4DBW. Could the board please confirm that they have no plans to cease the production of the paper version of Radcom? Stuart.
Thank you, Robert. Well, I can answer this in three answers of increasing complexity. Yes, I can confirm that the board has no plans to cease production of the paper Radcom. We have no plans. However, we understand that the paper version of Radcom is important to a significant fraction of the membership, and as long as it is physically and economically viable to produce paper copies of Radcom for those that prefer that format, we will continue to do so. I would, however, encourage all members to look at the electronic version of Radcom, and you got some sort of reasons for that from Steve in the previous answer. You can look at it either on the app or via your favorite web browser. And the reason for looking at it is that it incorporates some exciting and innovative features that are impossible to replicate in the paper version of the magazine. So don't worry, as long as we can, we'll produce paper Radcom.
Thank you, Stuart. Another question asked in advance now. This is about progression, so I'm going to ask Len to take this. It's been submitted by Steve Hartley, G0FUW. One of the stated aims of the 2019 syllabus review was to improve progression. Foundation to intermediate progression has dropped from 50% in 2018 to 20% in 2025, the lowest it has ever been. Will the board now accept that the 2019 review failed, and what is it planning to do to encourage more newcomers to progress in the hobby? Len.
Thank you for that question, Steve. The 2019 Exam Standards Committee annual report showed that the percentage of candidates progressing from foundation to intermediate was about 46%, having hovered around 40% since the RSGB assumed responsibility for exams in 2015. In 2020, the world changed due to COVID. Exams moved online and the progression rate dropped to 26%. This was due to an increase in the numbers taking their foundation exam, substantially increasing rather than anything else. The number of those actually taking the intermediate exam increased, but at a more modest level. Since that time, progressive levels have remained stubbornly low due to the syllabus changes, which reflected the increased privileges that are now obtainable at intermediate level. The exam is actually considerably more difficult than it was in 2018, which is causing a lot of people to kind of hold back from sitting the exam. In my own club, all of those people who have passed the exam at foundation level and stayed with the club have gone on to intermediate and or full level due to learning, training and support shown by club members, showing that clubs still have an important role to play in exams. It's a little known fact that even with online exams, clubs can still play a major contribution, as they can still host exams within the clubhouse, but it is done electronically, but the invigilation is done locally. Exams are considered a strategic priority for the board, and I'll pass the question to Will, who will comment further on the RSGB strategy objectives. Will.
Thank you, Len. Hi, Steve. It's a great question indeed, as Len has said. Thank you. Actually, before I turn to your question, if I may, on a personal note, and hopefully I'll be forgiven for doing this, if I could take the opportunity to say congratulations on winning the Kenwood Trophy. As a past intermediate student and a full student in waiting for later this year, this award is richly deserved by you and all the BBDL team, Steve. Indeed, if I might also go a little bit further to give a quick shout out to my amazingly supportive BBDL tutor, Ron Marchington, G4 MRQ. Turning to your question, Steve, how we encourage more newcomers to progress in our hobby is one of the core points that our newly refreshed membership strategy will be seeking to help address. I think there are a number of moving parts to what the answer will be, but I believe that two of the largest aspects will involve the following. Firstly, in terms of what we do, it'll be about how we continue to build upon and develop our in-person and virtual engagement models in a way that really resonates and connects with those in our hobby, encouraging them to explore and progress whatever interests and wherever that might lead them. Secondly, in terms of how we achieve this, I think a large part of that answer will lie in how we encourage and create ever more connectivity and collaboration across the relevant organisations in the amateur radio landscape, how we collectively facilitate progression across all aspects of the hobby. We'd be making a big mistake if we thought that the RSGB alone can achieve this, and I know that our thinking is aligned here, Steve. By way of illustration, and just by way of an example, let's think about the incredible work and impact that training organisations like SXAM, BBDL, OARC, and others have. And now let's think about what possibilities exist, helping with matters like progression by working even closer in partnership. That's exactly what we'd like to explore and work on. I'm excited about the opportunities ahead to make some real and lasting progress on this. Thanks for your question, Steve. And
thank you, Will, and to Len. Now we have a more advanced questions. These are both about the RSGB website, so I'm going to ask Steve to take this, and I'll read both the questions to you. Firstly, the question submitted by Jake Franks, M7 PBF. Are there any plans to modernise and improve the visual appeal of the RSGB website? I wonder if the committee have seen the user experience video as shared by M0PSX exploring the RSGB website. The website is in dire need of modernisation and accessibility improvements to make it more user-friendly, to encourage more new people into our hobby and to extol the virtues of an RSGB membership. I'm sure we have the collective skills to achieve this. And then a second question also about the RSGB website. This was submitted by Pete Sipple, Essex Hams, MX0SXA. Last year, we highlighted concerns about the RSGB's website and difficulties faced by newcomers when finding information on how to get started in the hobby. Despite promises at last year's AGM, the situation remains largely unchanged, with circular and broken links, typos and outdated or unhelpful content, as highlighted in a recent Essex Ham video. Does the board accept that the current website continues to neglect newcomers, and if so, when will this be addressed? Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Jake and Pete. Let's start by saying you're absolutely right. Okay, it does need work. I admit to sometimes being a little blind to that fact because I use it every day. That's not the best user example, is it? I use it every day to help answer questions and point people to the information which is usually there somewhere. But that somewhere, I think, is an important factor, and I think that's what you're saying as well. If people can't find things or we haven't made it easy, then if we're lucky, they ask us. And if we're not lucky, then they go away and we've missed an opportunity. So absolutely, we get it, right? No ducking that at all. Pete was good enough to highlight some typos, broken links, missing elements, things like that. Of course we saw it, Pete. How would we not? Some of the team have been working on those again, like we did last year. And I think most of those minor things are corrected. However, lots more things need to be done. Right? I think we need to highlight what beginners can do or what they can try next, perhaps with better links to Brickworks, one of our projects, or to the regional team for local help and support. I think you also highlighted, Pete, that a lot of local clubs have got poor information on their website as well. We'd love to see that change. I have a lot of people calling that are asking information about local clubs as well. So there's a whole load of things that could be done and should be done, right? There is an RSGB strategic priority called Getting Started, is one of the growth priorities. And I believe that needs much more attention. It's led by the board, so I'm hopeful, and you've just heard from Will about board attention to strategy. So I'm hopeful that those ideas and importantly content come from that strategic activity. Excuse me. At HQ, we'll also start a project to revise the look, feel and functionality, I think that was to Jake's point as well, of the main website. So absolutely not going to argue about it. Yes, we should, and yes, we will.
Thanks very much, Steve. So now we have another question from our live chat. Another reminder, please, if you're asking a question, just please do include your first name and your call sign if you have one as well. This question's about school clubs, so I'm going to ask Ben to take this. It's been submitted by Anson, M9IPQ. I heard a bit ago from my regional representative that the number of full licence holders required to start a club was being reduced. Progress, I am 15 and want to start a school club. Ben.
Okay, thank you for that, David. And yeah, hi, Anson. Thank you very much for the question. It's a really good question. How I understand it, you don't have to have a full license to start the school club up. You would have to have a full license to be able to supervise other school colleagues that want to operate the radio. So we've had a focus on schools. We've spoken to the RCF, the Radio Communications Foundation, and we've agreed with them that they'd be willing to offer a free exam to a teacher or a mentor that would be willing to start the group up and then hopefully progress to the full, so they could mentor the youngsters, the colleagues, to teach them the basics to pass their foundation exam. And this offer is still there. So if you would like to confront a teacher that you have, or failing that, it would be yourself pass the foundation exam first, and then which is free. We can also offer that through the RCF, free for you as well. And then if you have colleagues there that would also like to get involved, they can also go for their foundation exam as well. So you can kind of get a group together who are all licensed, and you can operate as a group. For a group call sign or like a club school call sign, you would have to have your full exam, and I think there's 3 members that would have to have full exams. But to actually start a group, you can start a group with your foundation exam for a person to be leading it. And I do believe with the new license regulations as well, the foundation exam can supervise others as well. So they could have a go at talking on air, and if they liked it, they could progress to do their exam. But please get in touch with me on this, because we can offer quite a lot of support. We have a school champion in the UK, the RSGB Youth Schools Champion, who'd be very, very willing to get in touch with yourself and work with you on starting the club up, because he's done it himself and he's done many other clubs in his region, and we can offer you all the free information and resources on doing so. So my email address, as I said previously in another question, is on the website. If you just search for the RSGB Board Directors page, failing that, it's my call sign, Golf Whiskey 4 Bravo Mike Lima at rsgb.org.uk. So yeah, I look forward to hearing from you, Anson. Please feel free to send me an email.
Ben, if I can just add to that as well. I was dying to sort of jump in and help. I know because you know I take the licensing questions in the office, that the guidance has changed after the last licensing review. If you look at the Ofcom licensing guidance document, then section 2.2 and specifically 2.2.2, it now means that to get a full club license for an educational environment such as schools and universities, it only needs 1 full license holder to get that full club license. So that may be part of what the question was about, I think. But it is changed for schools and university clubs.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And to Ben. Okay, Stuart, I think that was.
And of course, I mean, it should be made absolutely clear that anyone at any license level can supervise anyone else to operate up to the level of qualification and privilege that goes with that license level. So if you've just got one foundation licensee in the school, then they can supervise other pupils to operate up to that level. So it's much more, and including people who are not licensed yet can operate up to that level. So it's much more liberal than it was, and we thank Ofcom for the work they did to liberalise that, to make it amateur radio more accessible to people.
Yeah, thanks to all of you, Steve, Stuart and Ben. Can I just ask a supplementary as well? Ben, maybe you'd be able to take this. I know the RCF does support young people and pay and fund a lot of the exams. I know that does it at foundation level. Does that RCF funding also extend to intermediate and full license?
At present, it extends to foundation, because we're trying our best to promote a walkway through to amateur radio in schools, and we thought that was a start. But it has been discussed in our outreach team that it's a possibility we could look at the intermediate stroke full, but definitely maybe the full license in the long run.
Yeah, lovely. All right, well, thank you, Ben, and good luck, Anson, as well. Lovely to hear from you. And
David,
good
just
luck.
one
Yes, sure.
One more thing
Chris.
to consider here is that The legacy fund exists to support projects, and we could potentially use legacy money to support, a station in the school and license exams.
Well, there we are, Anson. Hopefully lots of help offered to you there. Good luck and well done to you at 15, not only to get your foundation and your intermediate, but also wanting to start a school club to spread the good news. So well done and good luck with it, Anson. Get in touch with the RSGB. We'll be delighted to help you. Next, we go back to some advanced questions, and this is about band plans. So I'm going to ask Bob to take this. It's been submitted by Robert Hammond, G4DBW. Given the exponential increase in FT8 and FT4 traffic on the amateur bands, has the RSGB considered proposals to the IARU amending the current band plans? These most popular modes are confined to only a 4 kHz slot in each band, whilst less used modes leave large segments unoccupied. I suggest, for discussion, say 4 kHz for local traffic, 4 kHz for intercontinental traffic, and 4 kHz for DX traffic. The current band plans make very inefficient use of our spectrum, he says. So, Bob, can you take that, please?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Robert. Very welcome. And of course, it's a very topical one at the moment. There's no doubt at all that modes such as FT8 and FT4 have seen almost exponential, or definitely very significant growth in recent years, and this has naturally led to increased pressure on the relatively small segments available and identified for those modes within the band plans. Band plans, however, are developed internationally through the IARU, the International Amateur Radio Union, and its regional bodies, and the RSGB works within that framework rather than acting unilaterally. One of the key priorities is maintaining good global harmonization, I'm sure you're aware of that, so that operators around the world can use the bands effectively without fragmenting effectively that situation. We expect the topic to be discussed further, actually, within Region 1 IARU HF committee at the forthcoming meetings, especially the General Conference, which takes place in Vienna in September. And as part of that, there'll be a need to consider not just FT8 and FT4, but the full requirements of all digital modes, of which need appropriate spectrum access. Whilst the idea of further structuring segments is interesting, in practice, band plans rely on a degree of flexibility and operator cooperation rather than rigid subdivision. So that they remain workable in different regions and operating styles. So the Society will continue to contribute to these discussions positively to help ensure that spectrum use remains efficient, balanced and reflective of how amateur radio is evolving. And I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bob. Another question sent in advance now, and this is about the reciprocal access to ARRL resources. So I'm going to ask Stuart to take this, please. It's been submitted by Philip Price, GW5JJV. The ARRL have an archive of many technical papers. I'm currently working through one of their publications, Hands-on Radio Experiments, and there are references to papers which are on their website, which I can't access due to not being a member. Could the RSGB consider setting up reciprocal access to each other's resources? Stuart.
Thank you, Philip. First thing I would say is that for a number of the ARRL publications, they do publish a web supplement. I don't think they do it for the book you had in mind, but they certainly do it for some of their other books. The RSGB is always looking for ways to improve its services to members. I think that's absolutely a definite. But unfortunately, there are several significant obstacles to providing the service that you're requesting. The first is the technical problem of securely extending authenticated access to a large additional group of amateurs that are not in the host nation, the host national society, and who are thus not in the existing membership database. Given the security implications, which these days are absolutely at the top of everyone's mind, and the not insignificant implementation costs in a world where everyone is stretched for money, I don't see how this is going to be feasible in the short term. Second reason is commercial, and quite often these things come down to money. With all national societies looking to increase their international membership to fund services for the amateurs in their host countries, it seems unlikely that an agreement would be reached in the near future. We are, however, mindful of the need for our members, and should the opportunity to get joint access, should that become viable, then of course we will explore it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. I hope that helped, Philip. So now another question sent in advance. This is about band plans in other formats. So I'm going to ask Steve to take this. This has been submitted by Jen Cockle, M9PEG. Your shop is great and all the info you provide on radio is great. Wondering if you could sell laminated band plans or band plans on a stiff card or even a little booklet with band plans and all the other useful info you provide in your logging book. Not everyone wants to purchase a logbook, but the stuff you provide in it, such as band plans, repeater lists, country codes, etc., would be so useful in a portable little ring-binded pocketbook. Thanks in advance. Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Jen, and good to hear from you. Thanks, first of all, for your kind comments about the products that we offer. Much appreciated. Nice to hear. Band plans are always a really interesting subject, you'll be surprised to hear, and actually one of the most visited parts of our website. Just to share a bit more information again, we see from the analytics that it is way up the top of near the top of the pages that people go and look at. You can get straight to it with rsgb.org/band plans. That'll get you straight there. I think people check it regularly, keep it open while they operate, but of course it might not always be easy to do that, so I do understand your point. We publish the band plans in a variety of formats on the web and in Radcom each year. I think it's February if I remember rightly. So people can view and print whichever format might help their particular operating style if they choose to. If people want to link to our band plans from their own website, that's fine, but they should really link to it rather than take a copy, because those copies rapidly go out of date, and we see that across the internet, that's for sure. So link to it or use our live version to keep up to date. So the other information you mentioned is also available on our website. Actually, the repeater lists are on a separate website, which is run by our ETC, Emerging Technologies Committee, who look after frequency coordination for repeaters and gateways. And that's at ukrepeaters.net, but it's still an RSGB website. The country prefix list is also on our website. As far as printing is concerned, we do print the band plans in the yearbook and in the, I think it's the deluxe logbook. You're quite right. And we're reviewing what we produce and how at the moment. So we'll certainly take this into that process and see what we can come up with, Jen. I hope that's okay.
Thank you, Steve. Next question, another question asked in advance. It's about use of simple receivers to get people interested in amateur radio. So I'm going to ask Ben to take this. And the question's been submitted by Terry Chipperfield, G3VFC. Rather than offering a free VHF handheld radio to newcomers, could a simple to operate receiver be given to encourage listening to all sorts of transmissions, some of which might lead to an inquisitive response and subsequent interest? Size, appearance should be acceptable to all household members and come with some indication of where and when to listen, and include local as well as international and broadcast as well as amateur stations, all reminiscent of how many of us got the bug. Ben.
Okay, thank you, David, and thank you for your suggestion, Terry. It's a thoughtful idea, and I completely understand where you're coming from. Many of us indeed get the bug by listening first, and there's definitely something to be said for the curiosity that grows from simply tuning around the bands. A simple receiver can be a great introduction, especially for listening and learning. It can also spark interest among other family members who might overhear something unusual or exciting in the background. That kind of shared curiosity can absolutely lead to more people wanting to take their exam, get licensed, and eventually join the RSGB themselves. So I do see the appeal. It's also worth noting that publicly available web SDRs give beginners or any amateur to that effect a completely free way to listen to HF and VHF bands. And while it's not the same as holding a physical receiver, it does the job well enough to demonstrate what can be heard with a decent setup. However, in my view, once someone has taken the time to study and pass their foundation exam, even intermediate and full, and the overwhelmingly majority are eager to get on air and start experimenting. A receiver is great for listening and learning, as I said, but by the stage, most newcomers already have a basic understanding of the hobby. What they really want next is the ability to transmit, make contacts, and experience amateur radio properly. And a VHF handheld lets them do exactly that from day one. A handheld also opens the doors to a huge range of current amateur radio activities, such as SOTA, POTA, HEMA, and many more others. Yes, sometimes you need to head to higher ground, but that's part of the fun. It gets people outdoors, exploring, and discovering what their new license can really do. A simple receiver wouldn't allow any of that. It would only let them listen. Of course, a handheld doesn't cover every band, but we all have to start somewhere. And as a welcome gift for joining the National Society, something you can immediately use to both listen and talk to other amateurs is a strong, practical offering. It gives newcomers a real taste of the hobby before they consider investing in HF equipment later on. That said, I do agree that a simple, well-designed receiver, especially one with guidance on what to listen for and when, would also be a lovely introduction for some people. In an ideal world, both options would make great entry-level gifts. But in terms of usefulness, flexibility, and helping new licensees feel part of the community straight away, the VHF handheld remains the more practical and engaging choice. I hope that's answered your question, Terry.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. We're running to the end of our session now, so we've got another question now asked in advance. This is about identity badges, so I'm going to ask Steve to take this, please. It's submitted by Simon Edwards, GM0SCA. Has the board considered branded identity badges? I have logo badges with my name and call sign for GMDX, AMSAT, Raynet and CDXC, and very similar named badges for various motorsport clubs and its national association. I'm thinking something similar to those issued at Friedrichshafen. Credit card size that could be either attached to a lanyard, RSGB already have one, or inserted in a plastic holder. Another option would be to have a magnetic mount. Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Great to hear from you, of course, again. This is interesting and aligns with some thoughts I've been having in this area recently, and we've been talking about in the office. So leave this with us for a while and I'll see what we can come up with. I bet we talk about this some more when we see each other at the next event, Simon. But yeah, good idea, on the list.
Okay, thanks, Steve. And so this is the final question of the day, and it's another advanced question, and it's about attracting new members. So I'm going to ask Will to take this, please. Given the seemingly, it's submitted by Alan Messenger, G0TLK. Given the seemingly high average age of radio amateurs typically seen at events and average mortality rates, what is the RSGB proposing to do about attracting and retaining large numbers of new members, not just relatively low numbers of youngsters? That's Will.
Thanks, David. Hi, Alan. I think you ask a great and critical question. I absolutely agree that we need to be looking to attract, retain more members from all demographics and backgrounds. And this aim and need permeates throughout our growth and newly refreshed membership strategic priorities. Just thinking about our growth priority first, it comprises several work streams which we look to engage with and attract a variety of audience segments to amateur radio. I think we've made excellent progress over the year with our work streams focused on youth engagement, practical outreach and reimagination, audience segments, but you're right that our progress needs to be wider than this. And I can assure you that the board is galvanised on the need to push further and faster across all our strategic growth work streams, including our getting started, skills and career development, and mature audience segments. So absolutely more to do in growth, but I think we should feel proud of the work and impact that so many brilliant volunteers have made happen in pushing forward aspects of our growth strategy over the last year. Turning to our newly refreshed membership strategy, which I summarised earlier in response to Steve GA SFR's question, this is aimed at attracting, again, as well as retaining new and existing members. How we engage in person and virtually with our membership base, and focusing on those things that matter most to our members as a member-centric organisation. I'd like to think that working together as a team of 450 volunteers and our HQ team, along with our critical partner organisations, that we can make together, we can make a real impact, which drives right to the very heart of your question. I guess we shouldn't kid ourselves that there's a lot to do, but we'll be building upon an amazing base with a great team and a society that has an enviable reputation around the world. So there's a lot to feel very positive about, and there's always room for more volunteers. So if you're not already involved, can I just make a plea for anybody else to step forward and to help make a difference? I can assure you it's a fantastic team of people that you'll be working with. Thanks for your question, Alan.
Thank you, Will, and thanks to all of the board for taking the questions today. Back to the board chair now, Stuart Bryant.
Thank you, David, and thank you everyone who's asked questions. The board are, of course, always delighted to engage in further dialogue. We're always open. You have all our email addresses. We're always open to answering questions. So we've answered all the questions submitted in advance of the AGM, and as many as possible from the live chat as we could in the time. We thank everyone for taking the time to submit those questions and hope that we have answered them fully. The AGM takes a significant time and effort to prepare so that everything runs smoothly. On your behalf, I'd like to thank the staff and the wide range of volunteers who have had input both in front of the camera and behind the scenes to support the election and the AGM preparations. All that remains is for me to now thank everyone for joining us today, and I'm passing it over to Bob.
Yes, thank you, Stuart. And it would be remiss of me not to add from a president's perspective my sincere appreciation to everyone who underpins the work of the society, to our staff, the team at HQ, and the many volunteers who give their time so generously. Your commitment and quiet professionalism are what sustain and move the society forward. It does not go unnoticed, and it is deeply valued. I'd also like to recognise all of those who have taken part in today's meeting, and equally those who may be engaging with this AGM at a later time on the video channel. Your continued interest and support are an essential part of our strength as a community. Thank you all. 7-3.
Thank you, Bob. Now, please can I ask people to stay with us now and prepare your questions for the interactive panel session, which is next, and it's entitled Spectrum Matters. It's vital and needs your support. The Society works hard to defend the spectrum and ensure that radio amateurs can enjoy amateur radio across the bands. In this presentation and subsequent discussion, we are delighted that the RSGB Spectrum experts, Murray Niman, G6JYB and Barry Lewis, G4SJH, will be joined by IARU Vice-President Thomas Wrede, DF2 Oscar, and RSGB General Manager Steve Thomas, M1ACB. They will discuss the recent and current threats to the spectrum and how the RSGB leads the input into many of the spectrum defences. RSGB EMC Chair John Rogers, M0JAV, will also talk about potential new major threats to the noise floor. RSGB Propagation Studies Committee Chair Steve Nichols, G6JYB, will facilitate the discussion. Whether you're new to amateur radio or have been enjoying it for decades, this is an important presentation and Q&A, that you won't want to miss. So thank you from me.
As Stuart says, we'll be shortly having an interactive panel session on Spectrum Matters. But first, we've heard today about the 2 fantastic awards that the RSGB National Radio Centre won last year. These awards are due, in no small part, to the large team of volunteers who welcome around 80,000 visitors each year. Whether they're talking to individuals, families, school or university groups, the volunteers explain amateur radio in an interesting and accessible way. Many of those visitors go on to find out more about amateur radio and to take their foundation licence. The RSGB Comms Manager went to chat to some of the NRC volunteers to find out why they chose to be part of the team, what they enjoy about it, and also what they gain from it. If you're inspired to join them, find out more on the RSGB website.
Welcome to the RSGB's National Radio Centre. We have a great team of volunteers who are always happy to explain more about the displays. They'll also tell you how you could get involved in amateur radio and give you tips about taking your foundation licence.
I think the best thing is the people.
The NRC gives me a chance to explain to people, to educate people, to entertain in some respects. But we also merge that with the history behind amateur radio and radio in general that goes way, way back to the stuff that Marconi played with all those years ago.
And then I learned from the visitors as well, because some of them, their fathers or grandfathers have worked at Bletchley Park or with the Radio Security Service. And it's very exciting for them to see, say, the radios that perhaps their grandfather had worked with during the war.
I volunteer here because it gives me the face-to-face contact with other radio amateurs and the visitors here, and to see how much delight they take in learning more about radio and how it underpins such a lot of their daily life and the technology they use.
I like to ask the children if they'd like to send their names in Morse code. I coach them through the process. Most of them can do it very well, almost instinctively, and then we give them a little certificate at the end. And that allows them to take that home and to say that they can send their names in Morse.
We're using the new licensing conditions by enabling the public to actually go on the air themselves, say a short contact on D-Star of the United States, and hopefully they'll be stimulated to go away and get their own license.
I explain about amateur radio, what it is, how to get into it, and how cheap it can be to get started.
The National Radio Centre is not just about radios, it's about the social side of it, to get visitors to meet the technology, sometimes for the very first time.
Yes, the team here at Bletchley Park, or the NRC, is very friendly team. Lots of knowledge across lots of different aspects of amateur radio. So I've particularly learned things about the satellite systems, low Earth orbit satellites, and using the Oscar 100, various other aspects of the hobby. There's a lot of knowledge and you can learn a lot about amateur radio and different aspects of the hobby.
Volunteering at the RSGB's National Radio Centre is hugely rewarding. Perhaps most importantly, you will be giving something back to the hobby by helping to encourage a new generation of radio enthusiasts. You don't need to be highly skilled, just have an enthusiasm to talk to people and explain about amateur radio. We'll give you all the training you need and you'll be joining a team of volunteers with a great team spirit. Interested? Get in touch.
Engaging.
Very stimulating.
Involvement. Delightful.
Fun.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Spectrum Matters. Spectrum is very important for amateur radio. No spectrum, no amateur radio. It's as simple as that. But there are issues surrounding spectrum, and there are threats to spectrum as well. So today we've got a panel of 5 people that are going to give us a short presentation. Then we're going to go through some questions and answers. Meanwhile, if you are watching this live, you can submit questions for the Spectrum panel using YouTube live chat. But please include your name and call sign if you've got one on the question. So it's simple. Right, so let's introduce our panel anyway. We've got today we've got Thomas Wrede, who's the IARU Vice-President. That's Thomas DF200 or 00, beg your pardon, DF200. RSGB Spectrum Chair Murray Niman, G6JYB. RSGB Microwave Manager Barry Lewis, G4SJH. RSGB EMC Chair John Rogers, M0JAV, and finally RSGB General Manager Steve Thomas, M1ACB. So we're going to start, as I said, with a series of presentations, and so we're going to start with Thomas, IARU Vice President, who's going to give us an overview of Spectrum Matters from a kind of international perspective. So Thomas, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction, Steve. And I'd like to introduce the IARU, and of course, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. With my presentation, and this should be slide 1, which I unfortunately don't see on my screen at the moment. I'd like to give an overview of the International Amateur Radio Union, IARU in short, and its work for the amateur radio community. IARU is the umbrella federation of national member societies worldwide, and with a team of volunteers we represent over 170 national associations in 3 world regions. And these many member societies are the building blocks of the IARU. Our president is Timothy Allen, Victor Echo 6 Sierra Hotel, who sends his greetings. Tim is traveling to the UK today and unfortunately cannot join us. IARU's main mission is to protect spectrum and defend the amateur radio spectrum with our work in international organizations like CISPA, the ITU, and the regional telecommunications organizations. Slide 2, please. The IARU is a sector member of ITUR, and our volunteers represent us in several so-called working parties. These are working groups dealing with spectrum management for the various services, as you see on this slide. An important working party for us is Working Party 5A, which also deals with the amateur and amateur satellite services. We even have our own amateur working group, chaired by Dale Hughes, VK1DSH, in the Working Party 5A. Next slide, please. Over the years, IARU has achieved several remarkable spectrum additions for radio amateurs. For example, the addition of the 10, 18, and 24 MHz band in 1979, and more recently, defending our allocation in the 23 centimeter band at the 2023 World Radio Communications Conference, just to name 2 examples. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, I have to mention that there are threats to our spectrum. Radio amateurs have an incredible 9% of the frequency spectrum above 144 MHz. And you may reckon that this makes us a target for other services. I'd like to highlight one recent example where regulators have granted access to LEO satellite operators for using the 430 to 440 MHz spectrum for telemetry, tracking and command, so-called TT&C operations, based on Article 4.4 of the ITU radio regulations. The Article 4.4 basically states that regulators can allocate spectrum on a non-interference basis. However, Murray will later explain how regulators could apply that same article to the benefit of us radio amateurs. There are several other threats impairing our amateur radio operations. And I'd just like to name two here. For example, the over-the-horizon radars on several shortwave bands and sources of noise interference, which John will explain and detail in his presentation. IARU's message is that over time, radio amateurs may need to accept the concept of spectrum sharing for some of our primary allocations. Next slide, please. The World Radio Communication Conferences, WRCs, are held every 4 years to review and, if necessary, revise the radio regulations. And I mentioned Article 4.4 in the previous slide. The radio regulations are the international treaty governing the use of radio frequency spectrum. The next WRC is scheduled for 2027, and IARU's positioning has been outlined in a specific document. Several agenda items of WRC 27 will include within their scope secondary amateur and amateur satellite spectrum allocations. And Barry, in his presentation, will detail these allocations and which ones are under potential threat. So far, the good news is that no immediate direct threats to our spectrum have been identified, but of course we will continue to watch the situation until the start of the next WRC. Next slide, please. As Stuart said in his introduction this morning, today is World Amateur Radio Day. On this day in 1925, the International Amateur Radio Union was founded in Paris. Each World Amateur Radio Day has a specific theme, and this year's theme is Advancing the Spirit of Amateur Radio Through Innovation. And an ITU Newsblog article written by IARU President Timothy Allen, VE6SH, features the innovative role of radio amateurs in modern communications. It was published, I think, yesterday morning, and you can find it on the ITU Newsblog. Next slide, please. Right, this brings me already to the last slide, and let me briefly summarize here. I'd like to thank our volunteers, of which several are RSGB members, by the way, for their support defending our spectrum. In particular, some of the microwave bands are a target for commercial users, and increasing our activities in these bands may eventually help to defend them. The amateur radio service must also continue to prove its value to society for justifying its use for a rather huge amount of the radio spectrum available. One last comment. Please join and actively support your national member society. This will significantly help IARU's spectrum defense work. Thank you for listening, and back to Steve.
Thank you, Thomas. Excuse me. Just a quick reminder then, if you're watching this live, you can submit questions to the Spectrum panel using YouTube live chat. So please include your name and call sign if you have one with a question. So now we're going to go for a UK perspective, really, and we're going to speak with or hear from Murray Niman, G6JYB, who's the RSGB Spectrum Chair. So over to you, Murray.
Sorry about that. Thanks for that. So we'll have a sort of UK perspective on this in a mere 3 slides. So we'll get to questions shortly. So starting with the first one, RSGB strategy includes spectrum, as without wavelengths, there is no amateur radio, to quote one of my illustrious predecessors. Now, as Thomas said, at the top level, this is decided in ITU. So it flows down in terms of the main allocations. ITU radio sector have their World Radio conferences every 4 years or so, and that defines the main allocations. Those in our part of the world flow into the CPT, which is our regional telecoms body. They have regional variations and also get involved in other stuff. So that when we consider HAREC and TR6101, that's dealt with at CPT level. And of course, nationally, Ofcom then determines how it is put into our licenses, or perhaps not in some cases. IARU member societies, of which RSGB is one of the larger ones, particularly in Region 1, then develop operating band plans and, based on those allocations, and support all sorts of other usage, training, innovation, etc. So we work in a very crowded and challenging environment. To achieve allocations, you need 160 nations or so to agree at ITU if it's a global one, and that has to be by consensus. So we have to work internationally and work hard just to maintain what we have. Next slide. And we do that with IARU. So Thomas has made mention of a few concerns. This just lists a handful going right from the very bottom of our allocations near 100 kilohertz, with the emergence of a new generation of LoRaN navigation systems, wireless power, where we're talking about potentially tens of kilowatts, has been developed mainly in the LF and MF bands with harmonics that can go right through HF, but again will feature in microwave bands in due course. HF radars we've heard mentioned. So there is commercial and governmental demand for HF. It's not broadcasters disappearing. In space, Thomas mentioned sort of the 70 SEMS band. The nature of the satellites they're involved with are enormous. They're for what are called direct to handset or device. So they use antennas which are potentially thousands of square feet across to be able to listen and fully communicate with your smartphone without any other infrastructure. So that's a big antenna that needs to distinguish a very weak signal from yourself. And there's other sectors, so science, transport, even lunar exploration, moon bases and future observatories. So we have all sorts of sectors now coming up with spectrum demands, whereas 10 years ago we would have been fighting rearguard actions with the mobile industry, but not many of these other topics. And of course, we have existing primary users who may change their usage, and challenges on spectrum quality from the noise floor. And there's a separate service to deal with intruders who think our allocations are quiet and sort of just opportunistically transmitting them. Thank you. Next slide. And just to recap some of the international successes, I've listed them there. So WARCO 3, 2003, going up to the most recent effort at the World Radio Conference in 2023, where we were successfully hanging on to 23 SEMS, thanks to my good friend Barry's hard work. And referring to our ability to innovate, so Regulation 4.4 effectively is the basis of the UK non-interference innovation ban. So full licensees have access, very easily under the self-service NOVs to 4 other bands there, courtesy of Ofcom as well. So on that note, I think that's it.
Okay, thanks, Murray. Well, my interest is in HF, but it looks to me as though microwave is growing intensely. Most of the things you talked about there in terms of space were microwave based. So it's probably a good time to hear from Barry now. So Barry Lewis is the RSGB microwave manager. Barry is G4SJH. So Barry, what can you tell us about microwaves?
Well, thank you very much, Steve, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Murray and Thomas, for the initial discussions there, or presentations. So yes, I'm the RSGB microwave manager, and I look after the RSGB's interests in the spectrum bands above 1 gigahertz, which is, as Thomas pointed out, quite a large percentage of our spectrum. And I do this in collaboration with Murray as a member of the Spectrum Forum, for the UK, but also in collaboration with Thomas and the IARU and the regional part of the IARU, where I chair the Spectrum and Regulatory Committee there. So lots of engagement. So how do we defend our spectrum and our microwave spectrum? So from my perspective, we've heard about some of these bodies already. I also engage directly with our national regulator, and we do see national initiatives coming out from Ofcom that have impact on some of our gigahertz frequency ranges. In particular, in recent times, last year we saw some moves relating to the 2.3 gigahertz band, for example, which we contributed to their consultation processes. And we've seen other bands in earlier years being impacted as well. On an international footing, we're also engaged, as Thomas says, with the ITU activities and the preparation for the World Radio Conferences, and also in the regional developments, which for us in Europe are taking place in CEPT. So we engage in all these bodies. We can participate formally in all these groups. We are sector members through IARU of the ITUR. We are MOU'd observers through CEPT, which means we can fully participate in all their work, make contributions, discuss every element of the work, define work items, and so on, be fully involved in the work, which gives us lots of opportunity to keep well engaged with the topics. So if we move to the next slide, please. In this slide, I've tried here to give you some feel for the breadth of the discussions that we become involved in. And as Thomas said, we have 9% of the spectrum above 1 gigahertz. So you can imagine that virtually any topic that comes into the microwave and millimeter wave bands from a regulatory perspective, could be very close to some of our frequency ranges that are allocated to the amateur and amateur satellite services. So if we look at the three boxes, this is my arbitrary sort of subdivision of the band. We know that we have bands in the 1 to 10 region of 1.3 gigahertz, 2.3, 3.4, 5.6 gigahertz. In the 10 to 100 gigahertz region, we have the 10 gigahertz band right at the bottom there, 24 and 47. And in fact, 24 and 47 are both primary allocations to the amateur service. And then in the upper box there, 100 to 300, we have a number of ranges there also, 75 gigahertz, 122, 134, and 248 gigahertz. And again, some of those have portions, if not all of the band, are on a primary basis. So they do need to be respected and protected. But the point really of the slide is to really sort of underline this point that we're under pressure. And even though if you look across there, you'll see that none of those items are directly impacting perhaps our frequency bands, although in some cases we are, let's say, within the scope of the work. And I'll put an example at the minute. We have to be fully aware of what's going on because things can be in adjacent bands, things can be discussed that will affect things like protection criteria and so on in other services that could have an impact also into our frequencies, which may be adjacent. If we look at this figure, we can see starting at the left-hand side, again, the cellular applications are continuing to put pressure on for more spectrum for their, next G of development there. We see the mobile satellite applications, and this is the interesting thing that Murray and Thomas mentioned about direct-to-device. We're starting to see these guys collaborate with the mobile industry on cellular communications to provide these direct-to-device services. And at the moment, okay, we're kind of within the scope of the work in some of the frequency bands that are being considered, but we probably don't have a direct threat at the moment. But in the future, I'm sure these mobile satellite services will become very, they will grow. And then the mobile satellite guys will say, hey, we need some spectrum of our own now for this direct-to-device connectivity. And so, again, more pressure will come on new bands to support this kind of thing. Climate change is not outside the scope of discussion. We see Earth exploration satellite services. They want their spectrum protected, and they want new spectrum for new sensors and things that maybe they have in orbit. If we go up to the next block, we see a lot of satellite-based applications there. People will be aware that there are many new constellations going up, certainly low Earth orbit and medium Earth orbit, such as Starlink, Amazon, AST. These guys are putting up thousands of satellites, and these all need support from the ground, with Earth stations, with gateways, and so on. So this is again putting pressure on the spectrum from that perspective. And there are a lot of agenda items at the moment that are considering the satellite industries. And then finally, at the top end, we're seeing continued interest in, I've put radar applications, but things like short-range sensors, like millimeter wave security scanners, vehicle radars, which have been mentioned already. And these are often require huge bandwidths to operate, certainly compared to our kind of bandwidths. So these in turn have their own pressures that come to bear. So it's, you know, hugely vital that we look across the whole picture, even if not everything in the agenda for WRC is impacting us directly. And this is only ITU, right? So we have also in CPT, for example, in the regional bodies, leftover work from the last World Radio Conference, which continues. So as what happens at ITU filters down to the regional body, so we have to continue to be engaged and check that, you know, the outcomes of the World Radio Conference are, let's say, properly reflected at the regional level before they get down to the national regulators. So my final slide, please. Thank you. So how do we engage, and how is this carried out in respect to the RSGB? Well, of course, as I said, we have direct engagement with our national regulator. We can influence their position. We can support them as well internationally. We have good links. We're trusted participants with them. We have good links with their international team, and we can be part of their discussions and be involved in that. We participate principally in the international bodies through our involvement with the IARU, and this has been very effective for ITU and both for CEPT work as well. And this is where it's vitally important that we're there supporting the IARU, as Thomas says, with our activities. And I think that's all for me for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Barry. 300 gigahertz, that's they seem to go up every year, a little bit higher, I suppose.
Yeah.
Right, okay, well, now we can talk about electromagnetic compatibility, or electromagnetic incompatibility is often the case. So I'd like to introduce John Rogers, M0JAV, is the RSGB EMC chair, who's going to update us on what's been going on there.
Thanks, Steve. And following on from the talks about, next slide please, how we acquire spectrum and use spectrum, I'm going to try and talk about what we need to do to make sure we can use it usefully. So the EMC committee has got 5 main functions. The first and foremost is to help and advise our members' EMC problems. There are 2 ways of doing that, via the help desk and also by access to our web. So the help desk is helpdesk.emc@rsgb.org.uk. It comes up again on the latest slide. And to find the website, you go to rsgb.org/EMCC. So that's how we help people with problems. We have a wide variety, and having sorted out some of the problems, we then need to lobby regulators to try and make sure that the standards, just as the other people have been talking about, are protecting the spectrum from more radio frequency interference. A particular interest is looking at emerging EMC threats, and I'm going to cover a couple of those in a moment. We're also this year starting to think about methods to improve communication in noisy environments. And if anybody listening has any ideas on that, please contact me, because we want to start that as a new thread of activity. And we also represent members on all of these and other EMC matters. So next slide, please. If you look at the graph, which I suspect most of you are doing, what we're attempting to show here is how the signal strength decays with distance. So this is for a nominal 75 kilohertz square wave, which gives the weighting on the top left of the graph, starting with the highest weighting to 75 kilohertz. But as you approach the boundary between near and far fields, then the decay changes from inverse third to inverse square, and the whole thing wraps around like a ribbon, so that by the time you get out to 10 meters, by far the strongest interference, 10 meters distance, is coming in the 20-meter band. So the higher harmonics decay slowly and they predominate beyond 10 meters. Another problem we have is that there's not just one of these devices, there are many of them within interference range of our station, and the actual standards specify levels, but they only consider a single device, whereas apart from TR 14.4, there are no standards for multiple devices. So for devices like an induction hob, wireless power transfer, wind turbines, high voltage DC converters, then we not only have problems with the interference getting higher in the HF region than its fundamentals, but we also have to take account of multiple devices. Now, this is all adding up to an increase in background level, and we're working with the IARU and DARC, deploying ENAMS, their noise measuring system, to track trends in background noise. Next slide, please. Another item that's causing a lot of problem, particularly up in Cumbria, is a product called LineSight. It's being deployed to do monitoring of 11 kV lines. You can see in the 3 megahertz, the 80 meter band, that there is a significant repeating signal, and that causes significant interference to amateur reception. We worked with one of the amateurs concerned, helped him raise all the paperwork to Ofcom, got Ofcom out to come out and have a look at it, agree that it was a interference problem, and that perhaps even the device itself was not fully compliant with its EMC specs. But having done all that work, they then decided that the case was closed, as it was concluded it was not proportionate to pursue the investigation further. So what can we do about that? And this is where you come in. Next slide, please. In order to avoid Ofcom closing on a proportionality basis, we need you to report problems with RFI. Please contact the EMC help desk, helpdesk.emc. They'll record your problem and help you report it to Ofcom. We've recently published a leaflet, EMC leaflet 18, giving you advice on the sort of information to include, and the help desk will help you with that. If you want to find out more about the interference, please use the EMC pages. They'll help you locate, identify, and minimize the problem. You find those with rsgb.org/EMCC. So remember, it's very important that you report interference and that you don't just live with it. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, John. I'd never considered that an induction hob would cause interference. I'm going to have to check mine now. Never actually tested it.
Have a look on the website. I did, and there is a paper on there showing you what it does.
Oh dear. Okay, well, I'll look at that later. Right, so that's 4 of our presentations. Now we've got the final one, which is by Steve Thomas, RSGB General Manager, who will give us an overview of what RSGB are doing.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Let's go straight into the first slide. What I want to do, I mean, obviously what we've just heard is what the RSGB is doing, but there's a bit more to it than that as well. Quite a few of those people who've just spoken said that it's really important that we have a good relationship with the regulator. So I thought I'd just talk for a little bit about the relationships that we have with the regulator that support all the spectrum activities. So I've tried to pull out the ones that support spectrum defence in some way, or they're closely related to it. There's a lot of people within the RSGB who work to protect the spectrum. That's the important message in lots of different ways. Murray, that we've heard from already, is of course the Spectrum Forum chair. And the Spectrum Forum is a really interesting group. I hope Murray agrees. I think the way he runs it is great, but it serves multiple purposes. It brings together the RSGB spectrum managers, some of whom we've just heard from, but there are others. So spectrum managers, an HF1, VHF1, microwave one. But it also brings in lots of other stakeholders or interested parties. So it brings in some honorary officers within the RSGB. It brings in some committee chairs within the RSGB. And I've got some of those listed here. But importantly, the Spectrum Forum also brings in a lot of other, we call them special interest groups, that have got an interest in spectrum defence, so that it's not just the RSGB, but we run this forum, Murray runs this forum, that brings in lots of other people's views as well. And I just had a quick look on the website, and I counted about 35 members or thereabouts, I think, Murray, something like that. But right at the top, the president of the day is always the IARU head of delegation from the RSGB. So Murray works closely with the president of the day. But the other special interest groups, the sort of things I mean is AMSAT UK, I mean BARTAG or BATC, CDXC, GQRP, RayNet. They're all members of the, and I've missed some, so I hope they don't take offence that I've missed them. I just thought I'd pick a few out rather than list the whole lot. But those groups come together with their own view of what the problems in relation to their members are. I mean, very often those people overlap with being RSGB members as well, but they have a particular view about spectrum in their area. And also members of the Spectrum Forum, there's sort of consultants or corresponding members that have had an interest in spectrum matters over the years. Perhaps they've retired from what they're doing, but they come and help. So the Spectrum Forum, really interesting group. I thoroughly enjoy joining those meetings because it brings real amateur radio and spectrum defence into focus. So within the RSGB, then Murray runs the Spectrum Forum, and Murray and I tend to take the lead on licensing issues as well and discussions with Ofcom. But depending on what the topic is, we bring other people into that as well. I put myself on the list there because if anybody calls the office and wants to talk about licensing issues or Ofcom things, they invariably get through to me. That's, the rest of the team put me through. But I'm obviously often bouncing ideas off Murray and we come to a sort of a conclusion. But for instance, when we did the last licensing consultation with Ofcom, then we also brought in Stuart, the board chair, and John, who was the president at the time. We worked very closely, and other people, very closely with Ofcom on that whole consultation. So I still think licensing contributes to spectrum defence. It certainly contributes to our relationship with Ofcom, which is really important. So of course, John, who you've just heard from for EMC and EMF activities, and the EMF activities, I think John and his team did a fantastic job there, creating some tools. And there is actually a separate video from the convention a couple of years ago where we just got the people together who worked on the EMF activities with Ofcom. And there's a good interview where they actually talk about what they did. So that's been important. The ETCC, Emerging Technologies, Andrew Barrett chairs that. And those are the people that look after repeaters and gateways and the spectrum coordination before you go to Ofcom for any NOVs. The Operating Advisory Service, which is run by Ian Stewart, tries to give people advice on how to handle abuse, poor operating, those sort of problems. And Ian's got a close working relationship with Ofcom where things go in that direction. So there is a behind the scenes conversation there. Recently, Ian's also taken on the intruder watch coordination activity. And that's where people see intruders, non-amateurs, intruding into the amateur bands and monitoring those, but feeding them again into the IARU, into their the IARU intruder watch scheme as well. So a lot of the national societies feeding into a bigger group. Then we've got the exam activities that we do at the RSGB. Now I think that's really important to spectrum activities, because in order to get access to the spectrum, you need to take the exam. So here for the exam standards, Ofcom actually have a representative as part of the exam standards committee. So that's where Ofcom actually come and join one of our groups. But it means that the exam standards, we're at the right level. And then of course we've got my exam administration team at RSGB HQ. Every time anybody takes an exam, we have to pass their details to Ofcom. So again, that relationship is there. Short contest calls even Ian Pawson looks after those. And there we're sort of pre-checking that people qualify for the short contest calls before Ofcom issue the NOVs. And I've just put everything else there. What I mean by, if the phone rings and somebody's got an Ofcom question at HQ, it normally comes to me. If we can go to the next slide. Thanks. So the RSGB is constantly working for amateur radio. The introductions we've seen so far show why spectrum protection work is so important. And I just really need to highlight that RSGB members directly support our spectrum work by being a member. We'd also like to hear from people with spectrum skills who would like to help us influence and protect amateur radio worldwide. I think Thomas has said that the IARU are always looking for skilled spectrum people, and so are we. We absolutely need that to help protect the spectrum. So everybody should join the RSGB or whatever their national society is if you're outside the UK. But if you're in the UK, please join the RSGB and help us protect the spectrum. And you can join from as little as £5.66 a month. Advert over, Steve, and back to you.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, it was a quick question actually. So there's an awful lot of activity going on. So how is it funded and supported?
It is funded and supported by RSGB membership. I mean, we've got a few strands that come into our accounts, of course. Membership, absolutely top of the tree. Some of our sales activities, advertising as well. On exams, we break even. So we do that. But those are our revenue streams. But membership, above all else, by a huge margin, is what funds all of this activity.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've had 4 or 5 questions come in, which I'll get to in a minute. But I've got a question here. So what could be done about the growth of over-the-horizon HF radar, which seems to be causing more problems on HF nowadays? So I don't know who wants to take that one. Maybe Murray?
Yes, I can do. It's going to be a growth area, I'm afraid. So some systems actually understand frequency allocations and have been less of a problem than others. So, and there's 2 classes of HF radars. So over the horizon ones are the long range ones. There aren't many directly in the UK, but the UK does operate one in Cyprus. The most well-known one is the Jawn network in Australia. But we're well aware of the technology behind that is improving, and there is greater demand for them in the Northern Hemisphere. The other thing, which I think features more around the USA and some other areas, which may feature around the UK, is HF surface wave radars. So, for example, the bottom of the 5 megahertz band now directly overlaps an allocation for that new technology there. So we can only encourage the designers to look for quieter channels and have a look at table of amateur bands where they're more likely to be observed and monitored. So that's the IARU coordinates intruder watch or monitoring service, of which Thomas could tell us more about. And we try our best to interact with the operators or regulators, but yeah, it's a tricky area, I'm afraid.
Okay, you mentioned 5 megahertz there. Do you think that our 5 megahertz allocation will be under threat in the future? I'm thinking that as we head towards sunspot minimum, 5 megs will be a very useful NVIS band for the armed forces. So do you think we'll have pressure on 5 megs?
Well, you're right that 5 megs has got some very useful properties, throughout the solar cycle. So yes, as it declines, some of the governmental activity will tend to come down towards that area more. As we know, it's a very secondary allocation with particular conditions that are very explicit about defence usage. So, and we just have to be respectful of that. I don't expect it to change. That was covered in the board questions earlier. If we ever got an opportunity to do a bit of a swap, we'd look at aspects of that which we proposed before but hasn't flown, I'm afraid, with the primary user. So 5 megs is merely one of several secondary allocations where the military or UK MOD have full control. So in the frequency allocation table, over and beyond Ofcom, essentially. If you look in your license conditions, 2 of the microwave bands have pullback clauses in them, and the coordination notice, which can be updated at the whim without much notice, covers other defence and governmental usage. So we just need to be very respectful. We don't have a God-given right to every frequency, I'm afraid.
Oh, I think we should. Okay, well, it's probably a good opportunity now to go to the questions that have been submitted. So I'd like to go, I'll take them in the order in which they came in. So Robbie, EI2IP, says, it would be great to see more activity on both 8 meters, that's 40 megahertz, and 5 meters, 60 megahertz bands. He said, isn't 40 megahertz an innovation band in the UK? So again, I think that one's probably for you, Murray.
Yeah, so 40 megs is not an innovation band from an amateur point of view. It's where really just a handful of folk have been able to pay for Ofcom trials licenses, but Ofcom and the other sort of primary users in that area are quite adamant that so far and no further. The other thing is we're conscious that all of 40 to 50, that 10 megahertz band is recently been reallocated to climate change sensors as well. So significant power transmissions will not be looked on kindly. So unfortunately, the primary users, whether it's science or military radio in those ranges, we've done quite well in some sections like 71 megs, but alas, so far and no further, I'm afraid.
Okay, thanks very much. Right, now I've got another question in which may be one for Barry, I don't know. It says, given, this is Darren, G7LWT, he says, given the pressure on the 23 SEMS band across the globe, has the RSGB approached manufacturers to provide equipment support for the UK 23 SEMS allocation above 1300 megahertz?
Thank you, David, and thank you very much for the question there. Yeah, I suppose the problem here is that allocation we have at 23 above 1300 to 1325, I think I've got that right, is a UK specific allocation. I mean, it helps us very much, and at the moment we use it extensively for locating a lot of the television repeater outputs, which was very helpful to us because this takes the pressure off the coexistence problem that we've had with the radio navigation satellite service below 1300. So I think the problem here is that since it's only a national allocation, it's very hard to convince, the big manufacturers to build equipment and put it on the market for just this for this single national example. In fact, I can't think of another country off the top of my head. I'm sure someone will tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
that has
Ireland's
access
got
to
a
this band.
small segment, Barry, as well, but not
Okay,
as
yeah, maybe
generous.
in Ireland as well, but it's very, very, very small, and so yeah, this is the problem. But it's good that we retain this, and actually we have tried to socialize the idea, shall I say, of extending the allocation up a little bit from 1300, but these processes take time. And would take quite a fair bit of work in order to get full support amongst enough, let me say, regulatory agencies who be prepared to do this. So yeah, it's unlikely that we'd see much in the major manufacturers. Of course, there are people making small runs of equipment which do cover this part of the band, but they tend to be small kits, small manufacturers. Not mass market manufacturers, so I don't think we'll see much in that direction from them.
Yeah, on an associated question, we had a question come in from 2112 Anon, that's his screen name. He says, with restrictions on 23SEM's amateur satellite operations now in effect in a growing number of countries, has consideration been given to trying to get some globally allocated L-band spectrum above 1300 megs? You did touch on that, didn't you?
I think no is the answer. in essence, there's no at the minute we have not really engaged, and maybe Thomas would like to comment on this as well. We have not sort of tried to engage in discussions to try and find new bands for amateur service or amateur satellite service at the moment, because as we've heard, we have quite a lot. And this is a very sensitive area to try and get involved in, and it takes a lot of resources to do this. So most of our activity has been on defence, but no, there's no activity really to look at any further amateur satellite service spectrum above in L-band region or above at this moment in time.
Okay, thank you. Well, just one more reminder then, if you're watching this live, you can submit a question using the YouTube live chat if you on any question on the spectrum issue, and we'll put it to the panel. Right, so going back to the questions that we've had, Terry G3VFC says, could some useful data be extracted from contest activity stroke logs to help justify the allocation of spectrum to the amateur service to enable this to be meaningful? Reports could be mandated rather than just 5 and 9. Don't know about that one.
Well, I might ask you, Steve. Sorry to turn the table. Yeah. So I didn't list you in the relationships with Ofcom in the list. However, do you have any propagation connections with Ofcom? Because that's really what Terry's probably hinting at here, I think, isn't he? Sort of propagation by contest reports.
Okay, well, we do have relations with Ofcom. In fact, we've just jointly put in a receiver at Baldock, which is measuring signals coming from the States, from CHU, the time station there, and WWV and WWVH. And we're upgrading it soon to make time of flight measurements as well. So we're using that to make measurements of transionospheric signals coming in from the USA on a number of frequencies. So I think we can measure up to 50 frequencies at a time. So, it's still early days, but so we're doing a lot of research on that. And I think Ofcom get access to that data as well. I know they do because one of their staff is a radio amateur. And it's something that we're keen to do. If we're asked, we can help out. Otherwise, logs, contest logs, I don't know. They've never asked for them, so it's a good question.
Yeah, sorry to put you on the spot, Steve. And
no, that's all right.
Neither of you or I knew that question was coming, so that really was off the cuff, wasn't it? So.
Good. Okay. Right, now, next one. Phil, M0DZH, says, everyone's car tyres are on 70 SEMS. I think what he means is the tyre pressure monitoring systems are on 70 SEMS. I haven't heard my tyres, transmitting on 70 SEMS, but he said, my white goods are on Wi-Fi machines. My biro will need to be smart soon. When allocating the spectrum, is it ever considered if it's worthy or just money? I think that's a Murray question, isn't it?
It just shows you the sheer ingenuity of society to put smartness into everything. And some bands are very much favoured for short-range devices, including 433, as you say, 2.4 gigs and 5 gigs. And there's other stuff down in HF. So we can't push back, but the framework that covers a lot of those devices starts in one of the CPT subgroups where we do have some representation. So there have been cases, car radars was mentioned by Barry, where we ensure that the industry is aware of other things in the band that they should design for, because nearly all the things you mentioned are non-protected. So they have to design their receivers to sort of withstand other uses, including potentially amateurs as well. So we can't uninvent these things, but it's an example of sharing and coexistence is always going to be a challenge.
I'll let you into a secret. I've got wireless tyre pressure monitoring on one of my cars, and I disconnected it because I'm quite capable of using a tyre pressure monitoring gauge, But and the batteries go flat, and they don't know what to do when that happens.
But don't forget that there were in the early days, remote car alarms. A lot of those were in 433. They found that if they were in a certain part of Yorkshire with a very high power primary user, they didn't work very well. Unlike smart meters, which use long range radio in that neck of the woods, they have over time moved to alternative channels, either below 400 or up in the 860 megahertz exempt band. So they may try, and then they may learn and pick somewhere more suitable.
Okay. Now we've got a question here, which is for John Rogers, really. Maybe a comment more than a question, but I'd like your opinion. Phil, M0DZH, says, I'm about to report a big RFI problem. I've never seen noise this big. I'm currently logging on and off times, and I consider 2 weeks would be good. It's a PSU, so it's a power supply unit next door, and they're being very, very difficult. So what does he need to monitor and report to you guys?
Well, what he needs to do is to contact the help desk, because the help desk is run by John Livesey, who was a former Spectrum officer for Ofcom, and he will help you report that. If you need, it is always difficult, because ultimately, if it's a neighbour's piece of equipment that's causing interference, and it is not easy for Ofcom to prove that there is a real deficiency or non-meeting of standard in that equipment, then you rely on the goodwill of the neighbour. So we call it champagne and chocolates. Ultimately, if you find the fault, you report it to Ofcom. It's not totally, out of spec, then it's going to rely on the good nature of the neighbour. Now, we have had many switch mode power supplies where the amateur has been able to point out or provide a different power supply that cures the problem. But ultimately, stay friends with your neighbour.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's all the live questions we've had at the moment. I've got some others here that we've pre-prepared. Now, quick question. Has the increase in power allocation for advanced class amateurs, that's full class amateurs, to 1 kilowatt, has that caused any problems that we know of?
I could start with that one with my EMF hat on.
Go on then.
The problem it may cause is that when you go up from 400 watts to 1 kilowatt, you effectively increase your compliance distance by a factor of 1.6. So particularly if people have antennas close to boundaries, and that includes radials and counterpoisers, then they need to redo their EMF calculations because they may find that the exclusion zone is now affecting people affecting places where people may be, which you wouldn't have seen before.
Okay, so that's the ICNIRP regulations, isn't it?
Yes, well, it's the license regulations of Ofcom on the amateur license.
Good.
Yeah,
Right,
Steve, I was going to ask just at that point, if I can, whether Thomas has got a view of sort of the EMF and the safety regulations across other countries as well, or if you have as well, John. John, I know you worked very closely with the Americans at the time, the ARRL EMC people, but Thomas, I was after just wondering what it's like across, you know, the rest of IARU and the sort of safety regulations around transmission.
It is in some countries, it is very strictly enforced. I mean, look, in Germany, radio amateurs have to provide a self-declaration to the regulator, to BNetzA. Luxembourg, it's similar. In Asia, it's often very strict. In Japan, for example, if you want to have the highest power license class, they do inspect your station. They come out, the regulator comes out, he does measurements. You need agreements by at least 5 or 6 neighbors that there is no interference, no impact. In other countries, it is less strict. It really depends on the country, I would say.
Okay. Good. Right. Next question then. Will the rise in LEO-based internet via satellite pose a threat to our spectrum? That's low Earth orbit satellites, so systems like Starlink, and there's an upcoming Amazon one, I think. So is that going to pose a threat to our spectrum?
Yes,
well,
for me, right?
Oh, maybe for both of us, Barry, but
you
what
go
you want to go? Yeah, I mean, I think the main threat I see at the moment is from operators of such systems eventually sneaking into our spectrum, starting with low bandwidth applications like TT&C. Is there a threat for the user access, for the user bands, remains to be seen? I mean, potentially, yes, but then we have allocated and protected secondary spectrum, so to say.
Okay. Right. Anyone else want to comment on that?
Well, only maybe I can also just make a comment. I guess related to this is the sort of direct-to-device kind of consideration that we've spoken about already. And actually we see in that work, again, we touch on this topic of harmonized frequency bands, because at the moment the discussion centers around handset frequencies, and all the handset frequencies are harmonized in the mobile service for mobile telephony. So that's where their interest is at the moment. So in that sense, the discussion isn't moving outside of those allocations. So notwithstanding the fact that in 1 or 2 cases we share some of those allocations, but so we're not moving into new territory at the moment. But you know, as Thomas says, we have to watch this space, because as I said in my presentation, I can fully imagine that if these services get successful, then the pressure will be built for new allocations and maybe new bands specifically for this application. But we're not there yet, and it would take some years before this happens. And I guess probably the whole thing has to be proven, you know, to be a sort of commercial success before we get there, I imagine.
Okay. I mean, we will watch that. I mean, in the past, any direct-to-handheld services, and there have been a number actually since the early 2000s, they were not that successful because they were tremendously more expensive than terrestrial services for end users. So if that really will become a huge mass market is possible, but it remains to be seen. We have to watch this.
Okay, thank you. Now a question for John again. Sorry, John, I keep coming back to you. What can be done about noisy solar power inverters? I mean, are these things CE checked? Or CE
Good question. Good question. The first thing to do when buying a solar system is to check that it is compliant with the solar PV standard. A lot of the devices claim compliance, sorry about the numbers, with ENIEC 6100-6-3:2021. It's a generic standard. And at the time, when there was no other standard, people could do a declaration of conformance to that standard. If you choose solar systems that meet the European standard, which is EN 55011, then they require testing of the DC ports. The biggest problem with the solar panel installations is the DC port wiring acts as a fantastic antenna. So the sort of things that you can do in conjunction with your installer is to do simple things like twist the red and the black wires together so that they have less common mode, and then put a choke on where they come into the system in order to filter it. Other people have had success with fitting EMC filters onto the DC lines. But the real secret is to get something that's compliant and to get it installed properly by a professional. Now, this has a real worry coming up with the so-called balcony solar panels, whereby you can put some solar panels on your balcony, put them through a micro inverter, plug them into your mains and supply all of your house wiring. Now, these have just been approved into the UK this month. And if you try and buy one, they'll probably be delivering them June or July, which is when the BSI standards work is expected to stop. I think I've said enough about that.
Okay. I was very impressed. You know the standard registration number, or it was off
No,
by
I don't. I've got it because I saw the question and I looked it up.
Oh, I'm very old. You shouldn't have said that. I thought you did it from memory. Okay, well, we've got some feedback from Dave Crump, GKQ, can't read it. He says ATV contest entries have been used to justify our retention of 71 and 146 megahertz. So that's a comment rather than a question, but I just mentioned that one. And Stuart, G3YSX, says, does the global frequency harmonization we have achieved put us at a higher level of spectrum threat? And who wants to take that one?
No, I don't think so. It should rather help to protect our spectrum, from a global perspective.
Yeah, that seems to be the logical reason for doing it.
Well, there was something mentioned in one of the introductions, I can't remember who said it, that said because in some cases where amateurs have got a worldwide allocation, it actually makes you a target for a commercial attack on that frequency. I don't know if that's what Stuart meant.
I don't know. Could be.
Yeah. So somebody mentioned it in their intros. I just can't remember who it was. Sure.
No. Okay. Right. Let's have a look. I think we're coming to the end now. So if anyone else has got any questions, get them in now. And I've got a question or a comment and question here from Richard G4HGI. He says that all that we've seen today costs a lot of money. Non-RSGB members are freeloading on the folks that pay their subs, he says. I suppose that is true, isn't it, Steve?
Yeah, it's not the words I'd use, but let's just go back to what I said. Let's encourage UK radio amateurs to join the RSGB, and internationally for radio amateurs to join their national society. It is incredibly important. I often have the conversations amongst some of these other folks on the call that there is an opinion out there, I think, that if we weren't doing spectrum defence and IARU wasn't doing spectrum defence, somebody would do it. And I just don't think that's true. No. I mean, Thomas, just give us the IARU view on that, because But you do hear that assumption, don't you?
Yeah, sure. It's spectrum defense. It's hugely expensive these days. It costs us, let's say, in an order of several 100,000 every year, and it's more during WRC years. And this has been funded by the IARU member societies, of course, mainly by the larger ones. It's funded by the International Secretariat of the IARU, which currently is run by ARRL. But again, if the next WRC is in Shanghai, the previous one was in the United Arab Emirates, people need to travel there. People need to stay in the hotel. It's all volunteers. They don't get a penny or cent or whatever for the time they spend and for the excellent work they do. But they have to eat. They have to travel there. And this amounts to a significant amount of money. That's why we need support of our member societies so that they can support the spectrum defense work.
Okay, good. Question that's sort of sitting on my mind is, have we ever got very close to losing part of our spectrum? Have we ever had any near misses, near miss, if you like, in spectrum defense? So Murray perhaps could answer that one.
It's more than near miss. We have lost spectrum. So back in 2015, our allocations at 2.3 and 3.4 gigs were trimmed substantially, because when they were released, the exercise was PSSR, Public Sector Spectrum Release, and basically as the MOD and others gave spectrum to mobile companies at the time, that included amateurs' secondary allocations. So we used to have allocations all the way up in 3.4 gigs. We're now down on the bottom 10 megs of that. And 2.3 gigs used to go 2300 to 2400, and the upper 2/3 of that have gone. So we have had examples there. Historically, we have also been a strange victim in 5 gigahertz. So technically, if you compare what the international allocation is there from versus the UK one, in the UK it's 3 small segments which are just left to us. So yes, there are past examples. We've also clung on where someone thought editorially, oh, the amateurs aren't there, and we've had a few near misses historically up at 76 gigs as well. So yeah, it's a real issue.
Right. Okay. Good. Well, let's have a look. Have we got any more questions? Let's have a quick look through them. This is something you touched on, John. Will the advent of wireless card charging cause even more problems?
Yes.
Well, there we go. That's the answer.
One thing I would like to perhaps add, though, not in answer to the question, but it's not only the money that the society provides and its members provide that helps us do this work. More importantly, it's the people. And I'm sure every one of our committees would welcome more help. And if you add up the total cost of the manpower, I think it would actually dwarf the cost of the pound notes that we spend in protecting the spectrum.
Right. Okay. Good. Thank you very much. Well, I think it's time to wrap up now. So I'd just like to thank Thomas, Murray, Barry, John and Steve for joining in this session on Spectrum today. I've enjoyed it. I hope you had too. And thanks for everyone at home who's been watching and sending in questions. And it's reminded us that spectrum defense is critical to amateur radio. As somebody said, if we have no frequencies, we have no amateur radio. And just to reiterate the point that being a member of RSGB helps to support all of this. So if you're not a member, certainly consider it. So I'd like to thank everyone who watched the AGM this year as well. And we hope you've enjoyed it enjoyable and found it enjoyable and informative anyway. So I think finally, to sort of sum up, today is World Amateur Radio Day, and what a day to have the AGM. So once we finish here, I think get on the air and enjoy yourself. Enjoy what you actually have worked, or these people have worked for anyway. Get on the bands and make some noise, as they say. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody who's been involved today and for the AGM, and say good DX to everybody, and bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Steve, and everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.